All right, hello, welcome. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist. The only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, joined by Jay, and we're back on a what is it? Thursday? It's a Thursday. I'm losing track of the days here. Uh, for I almost said Mystic Quest, which is
Mystic
something,
Pizza.
which is something else. Yes, Mystic Pizza. That's Julia Roberts, right? I never saw it. I know what it is, but yeah.
I
What
haven't
else
seen
is
it either.
Mystic Mac? That's what Conor McGregor would call himself because he said he could predict the outcome of his fights. Well, not lately. Another Mystic. There's a show now called Mystic Quest, which I watched a bit of on Apple, which is sort of just about the people who made like one of those big MMO or whatever they're called RPGs. Something like a World of Warcraft thing. I thought I'd like it, but I didn't like it. I quit after like two or three episodes. But there was a Final Fantasy game. There was one of the early spin-offs of the series called Mystic Quest in the early '90s, and for the longest time, not knowing what you would know there and being stuck on the numbering of the Final Fantasy series, because the way it worked was over here, if you played Final Fantasy 2 and 3 on the Super Nintendo, those actually were 4 and 6 in the real series.
Right.
Get we didn't get to or 3 or 5 at first initially as they came out. So it was like we knew there was an original. There was Final Fantasy for the NES, but then it was like for a while there was one called Mystic Quest that came out around the same time as 4. I was like, is Mystic Quest 1? Like, and I was like, no, there's one on NES. So I don't know. But anyway, Mystic Quest. It was like I said, it was actually a spin-off more so than the normal core series. It's hard to remember now. I haven't played it so long. If you want to find a copy of it on Super Nintendo, it costs a fortune. But I
Mm.
just remember it was almost kind of like a weird kind of like I don't know introduction, I guess, to those sorts of games. It was sort of like to teach people who weren't used to RPGs. So I remember playing it, and I can't remember story or characters or anything. It was sort of blank. I'll look it up. But that's what I think of with Mystic Quest. But this is Mystic River, just name from 2003, based on the novel the same name. And this it's a significant movie in a lot of ways. When it's interesting to think, this is one of the ones that not Mel Gibson, that Clint Eastwood directed. And I don't think we've done any movies he's directed or really
That's
done
a good
any
point.
movies that he's appeared in, which is kind of crazy when you think of all the movies he's also appeared in.
We not. Wow.
Clint Eastwood's a pretty unique character, and I named Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, of course, was a big successful actor, and then he was a somewhat successful director. But I mean, has anybody else been like as successful as an actor and a director as Clint Eastwood? I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so.
Like Ron Howard was an actor before he became a director, but he wasn't a big time movie star actor.
Yeah, I mean, Happy Days, right? Pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't think of any other figure, even if I go back enough, that was yeah that successful as
Well,
both as an
I
actor
mean,
and
and so prolific. I mean, God, the guy's like 90 years old at least, and still
he's
making movies.
92. Yeah, he just made a movie like a year or two ago.
I mean, I'm like, I'm always like, that's got to be the last one. Then he'll make three more.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I knew he'd been doing it a long time, but I didn't. Yeah, like you said, didn't I wasn't really aware of how prolific he had been until I really looked into it because I was thinking about I've only seen a really small handful of the movies he directed. His very first was Play Misty for Me,
Oh, he
and a
directed
lot
that. Okay.
yeah, a lot of these I've seen parts of, but not the whole thing. Like I've seen parts of Play Misty for Me, never saw the whole thing. His second
It's a
movie,
good
High
movie.
Plains Drifter, saw parts of it, never saw the whole thing. Then we skipped a few, saw parts of The Outlaw, Josie Wales, never saw the whole thing. So that's all in the '70s. The early '80s, he did a military thriller called Firefox. That was something about like a I don't know secret plane or something. Again, saw parts of it. So the first movie of his that he directed that I actually saw in its entirety was the Dirty Harry one, Sudden Impact.
Hmm.
Which is that the last Dirty Harry one, or is the Deadpool after that?
I think it's Deadpool. I get those damn subtitles mixed up,
Yeah.
or
So
not subtitles.
Sudden Impact was '83. I want to think that Deadpool or something was a bit later than that. So it's kind of weird that he was in several Dirty Harry movies, but he only directed one, and it wasn't the first one or the last one. I don't think.
Um, Yeah, I mean, like right around this time, man, he was just churning them out. I mean, every year he had a big movie, if not two a year, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was Letters of Iwo Jima, I believe, was after this, or Flags of Our Fathers. Those were right around the same time. And then
Yeah.
the $1 Million Baby, I think, was the next year after this.
Yeah. So that was two really big, movies in a row. Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, with a lot of Oscar buzz, a lot of nominations and some
Mm-hmm.
wins. Like notably for he got nominated for Best Director, didn't win it for Mystic River, but of course it famously won it for the actor Sean Penn Best Actor, and Tim Robbins for Best Supporting Actor. And that was really all. Even though it hasn't been too long since I've seen this movie, I don't know. I don't think more than 5 years, but maybe longer. I don't know. So I did forget. Was that I remembered always that it was those two. Like I completely forgot Kevin Bacon was the other guy.
Yeah.
And he's the cop, and I also forgot that like his partner is Lawrence Fishburne.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot Laura Linney was in there.
Stellar cast, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't beat that cast.
That's it. Well, that's a good thing you're not on here, Jess, because we have to talk about it for a while, and that's not very useful.
It's a pretty good movie. Good night, guys.
Yeah, pretty good. All right, bye. But well, yeah, getting back to him as a director. I mean, I guess Unforgiven was probably the first one I saw, which is a really good movie, and he stars in that too. Like he doesn't just direct that.
Probably my favorite Western, honestly.
And one of my favorite movies in the '90s, I think, is super overlooked, and it's hard to remember. I don't think most people think of it when they think of his movies. Is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I like that movie a lot, and I think people always forget that he's the one who directed it.
He's got such range, man. Like I mean, he makes all kinds of different movies, you know.
Yeah, that's
You
a
name
really
it,
good
he's
movie.
probably made one. I mean, he probably hasn't made a horror film, but or Blood. It's kind of like a horror. I don't know if he directed that one though. Blood
Blood
Slides.
Simple, Blood Simple. That was, or
No,
Blood Work. Sorry,
Blood Work. That's it.
Blood Simple's the Coen Brothers. Yeah, Blood Work's 2002, so it's the movie that preceded this, and that's one I've seen, and I hated it. I thought it was so boring. That movie bored me to tears.
I watched it once and I've forgotten it all. I didn't really care for it either.
Not really boring, but yeah, he was on a big run in the early 2000s, really, because he did Mystic River 2003, $1 Million Baby, Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima in the same damn year.
Wow.
And then The Changeling, which I also saw, was a little more, not as big of a movie. Of course, I think that had Angelina Jolie. And then Gran Torino is the last movie he did that I saw. Although, as you said, he just keeps making them. He's done tons of them since.
The
Gran
Mule?
Torino was 2008.
He did The Mule. He did, did he do American Sniper?
He did. And he did Sully and Richard Jewell. And there's still others. There's still more.
Jewel. Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah.
Sully was okay.
Yeah. He did Jersey Boys. If you're going to talk about his range again, kind of a different, because that's more of a biography type movie.
Yeah, Jess, I was actually going to bring this up. I get it kind of confused with Sleepers too.
Well, there's some things in it that reminds you a lot of Sleepers, and of course, the common denominator is Kevin Bacon's in both movies. Yeah. But yeah, because you've got flashbacks because you got adult actors, and then you've got flashbacks to what they were when they were kids, and a shared experience. I like Sleepers a lot more. I love Sleepers. That's just one of my favorite movies. But I mean, I still like this movie, but I like Sleepers a lot more.
We should do Sleepers sometime.
Yeah, I'd be all for that, because that's one of my favorite movies. Just love that movie. But yeah, I mean, you see some parallels there, and plus you've also got in the past, some trauma happening. It happens to all of them in Sleepers. In this one, it only happens to one.
Which, I mean, full spoilers, guys. If you're watching this after the fact,
right?
So he gets abducted and raped, right?
Yes.
And then he escapes. Dave does. Tim Robbins,
yes,
the adult character. I mean, really, the only significance of that is it fucks him up, right? it just, I mean, as you can understand, that would definitely, mess somebody up. But
Right.
that's,
Because I
yeah,
mean, getting molested is going to mess you up, and it's
yeah.
strongly implied that it's like even worse than that, right?
Oh yeah,
Like they brought him out to some shack somewhere. He said they threw him down in a some dirty basement that we see it with a sleeping bag, and there's a part where he just says, he when he talking to his wife and he names them George and Henry, he says they had their fun. It really suggests this goes beyond even that, that there was probably some
torture.
torture involved and that they were sadistic bastards on top of it all. So it's really pretty dark, just what's implied. So you can fully understand why it would have this effect on him. So sure,
Before
yeah, that's what's in there. Yeah, but then the other part in it, besides it messing him up, is the fact that obviously Jimmy, Sean Penn's character, it's a little confusing because Sean Penn plays
right,
Jimmy
I
and
know.
Kevin Bacon plays Sean.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's not confusing, I guess. But we'll try to remember their characters: Dave, Sean, and Jimmy. But Jimmy comments at least once, or at least a couple times, that about fate or whatever, how different things could have been if it had been one of the others that those guys had gotten instead of Dave. And of course, he's right. So that there's a little bit of talk there about fate or whatever, destiny, or how things would be vastly different. Like when he's talking to the cops about it at first, he says how much it would have altered because he said his daughter's mother, who was of course his first wife, now deceased. He says like right in front of his. I'm not saying he should in front of his wife. There's nothing wrong with it. It is. He says like right in front of his wife, like a beautiful, great, awesome woman she was, and he's just like, it would take a lot of courage and fire to approach her, and I had it and I did it. He's saying, if what happened to Dave happened to me, there's no way I would have had that, and I never would have I never would have gone near her, never would have married her, never would have had her, and she wouldn't have been murdered.
Right.
Fair enough. So he reflects on it a couple times.
And that was Katie's mother, the wife that died of cancer, right?
Yeah.
But no, I only mentioned the beginning because when I was remembering back, like for some reason, that's really the part that sticks in my head, the part when they're kids. And it's really like it's maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's very short. It's unlike something like Sleepers, where a big chunk of the movie and then it jumps forward. It's just basically the intro. You get a very short, sort of prologue there to establish that, and then there's some very quick flashbacks just sort of show Dave's experience without getting too graphic or detailed, like him running through the woods or him having a memory of being in the basement, but not they're actually down with him.
I don't think a lot of people really know the extent of that. How terrible it was. I know they probably assume he was molested, but they don't know that he was like straight up tortured.
No, and it was for 4 days.
Yeah,
too, right? So Jesus. Well, that's what he says. Like he even says when he's talking to his wife that time when she comes home late at night and he's watching the movie, he says their names to her, and he says, "I never even told anybody that." He just did not talk about it, as you might expect. So people could assume and infer and get some of it, but yeah, it's clear he didn't talk to anybody, and you would assume even back in the 70s they would have had counselors or psychiatrists that they would try to get him to talk to, and you get the feeling that he did not open up to them at all.
And so pretty much after that, like they didn't really communicate anymore, him and the other two friends. Like that was pretty much the end of that friendship, right?
I think so. Although it is interesting, they all did stay basically in the same area.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is it's not a big detail and it doesn't really mean anything, but at the very start, like what are they doing when these guys come? It's a perfect pretense, like they're writing their names in the wet cement of the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And am I wrong, or wasn't that Sean's idea? Right? Wasn't it Sean's idea, not Jimmy's?
I don't remember. I know Jimmy did it first.
Oh, if Jimmy did it first, then it was Jimmy's idea. Okay.
It was Jimmy's name on top, and then Sean, and then half of
okay. Okay, then I'm wrong then. Because that makes sense. I mean, Jimmy grows up to be a criminal. And we'll get there, too. Because of the way the movie reveals things, it really changes how you feel going through the movie.
That kid that plays Jimmy, the young Jimmy, like he does a great job. Like I could totally see Sean Penn growing up, that kid growing up to be Sean Penn. Yeah. He's got that. I mean, you could just tell he's got trouble in his eyes, which I think is also the brother in The Butterfly Effect. The
Oh, I haven't
child
seen
version.
that in so long. I can't remember that.
Yeah, I could be
I
wrong,
forget.
but
I don't know. It's been ages since I've seen that. But yeah, speaking of like Clint Eastwood, it's interesting too that like I don't know if we've done a movie. I don't think we've done a movie with Sean Penn, despite the fact that he's
I don't think
a
we have
really
either.
prominent actor of the last 30 some years. And maybe even strangers, like, did we ever do a movie that even had Kevin Bacon in it? It's like Kevin Bacon's in a ton of stuff, but I don't
Or
think we
Tim
ever.
Robbins. I don't think we've done one with any of those guys.
We've done one with Tim Robbins, although he's not a major character because Tim Robbins is in High Fidelity, which we did.
Okay. Okay.
Because when the main character, John, what's his John Cusack, but John Cusack's, his girlfriend breaks up with him. She starts seeing another guy, this weirdo. That's Tim Robbins. You might remember. So Tim Robbins, yeah, he's not a major character in that, but he does have his scenes. Speaking of John Cusack is the lead in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. So he's worked with Clint Eastwood. But
It's almost like the Kevin Bacon game we're playing now.
we're doing our 6 degrees here. Yeah, but I mean, I just don't think it seems the weirdest. I mean, Sean Penn for sure how prominent he is, but Kevin Bacon also for being prolific, right? Like, I don't know if we've ever done a movie, and we've done a ton of movies on here. I mean, sure, we do a lot of foreign movies that they wouldn't be in, but still, we do a lot of, Hollywood type movies too. So it's a little surprising. I can't think. I know, like I said, I could pick out Robbins. I can say with certainty we haven't done Sean Penn before. I can't say with certainty that Bacon hasn't popped up somewhere and we're just forgetting. So I will have to check on that. But
This is probably Tim Robbins' best performance. I think I've seen most of the stuff he's done, and he's great in this. They all are, actually.
well, I mean, I'll give him credit because Tim Robbins is one of the few actors that I know that like every time he's in a movie, he is different.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about Tim Robbins because I mean, as good an actor as Sean Penn is, I've seen him give that kind of performance a few times. I mean,
Sure. Yeah, similar type movies, the cop drama or whatever.
I
Against
mean,
the
it doesn't
girl.
get talked about much. It's kind of funny because one of the things going on in this movie, besides the main thing, is that in sort of the arc around not Sean Penn, but Sean the character is played by Kevin Bacon, is that in the background of all this, he's been separated from his wife for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
His wife left him when she was still pregnant and gave birth to the baby without him around, separated from him. And there's this ongoing thing where she does call him, like she wants to talk to him, but then she doesn't speak. So he just talks. And there's a movie I like. It might be my favorite thing with Sean Penn, even though it's not. Most people don't really like the movie. Is the movie The Interpreter? In the movie The Interpreter, which in which Sean Penn plays a Secret Service agent. It's a little different. His wife didn't separate from him. You find out during the movie that she died, and what happens is he keeps calling up his phone so that he can listen to the messages that she left for him. So throughout that movie, what the plot's going on, Sean Penn's character is deeply haunted by the death of his wife, and he keeps sort of reliving it because he keeps calling up his like answering machine and listening to the messages she left because she had this history of running away from him but always coming back. So she'd run away from him, but it seemed like, oh, she'll come back again, and then she actually died, get hit by a car or something like that. It's kind of one of the unrealistic things about that movie because it's probably like, well, if you have a Secret Service agent that's going through that, they probably insist that they have to have some time off, and they wouldn't be on active duty. But anyway, I really
Yeah.
like The Interpreter, and I know you think all the stuff Sean Penn's done, that's what you like, but I don't know, I've never been a Sean Penn fan or anything. So yeah, I like that movie. I like The Interpreter. That's with Nicole Kidman.
Okay. I've seen it, but it's
About
been years ago.
2005, 2006. It's not a great movie by any stretch. I just happen to really like it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I like Sean Penn. I think he's a little crazy in real life, but I think he's a pretty good actor.
He's super annoying. Yeah, but I give it to Tim Robbins more. I feel like Tim Robbins, when I see him in movies, he's always giving a different performance. He's always playing a different character. So I like that. I mean, Kevin Bacon can do that too.
It's a good point here too. Like, I don't think a lot of these guys. I mean, I know Kevin Bacon still does the odd film, but the other two you don't really see act a whole lot anymore. Tim Robbins. Yeah, War of the Worlds. He was great in that.
He was in War of the Worlds.
Yeah, and briefly.
Because it must be brief because that movie doesn't have any scenes without Tom Cruise.
Really?
No, seriously, every single scene has Tom Cruise. That's the point of that movie. Is like it never changes perspective.
Okay.
Like it's a narrative choice. It's always from his point of view. You never see a meanwhile or here's what other characters are doing. It stays with Tom Cruise's character through the entire movie. So obviously he interacted with him. I don't remember. He's not the crazy guy that he's down in the basement with.
Yeah.
Is he? He is?
Yeah.
Oh. See, there you go. Didn't even recognize him. Did not know that was Tim Robbins. So there you go.
Yeah. Love it, Close Range. And Bad Boys. That's a good one.
Yeah, I finally saw At Close Range a little over a year ago because I'd found it on a list of movies with best gunfights. And it turned out it didn't really have a gunfight in it, but it was still a good movie and worth the watch. So I was glad I watched it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I discovered it.
I like the Sean Penn from like the 80s and the 90s, you know?
Well, that was definitely his heyday. But 2000, I mean, it's 2003, and it shows, you know, he's still capable of delivering a really good performance. You could say maybe it's all downhill after that. I don't know. The Interpreter, as I said, I'm sure it didn't make much of a blip or anything, but I liked it, and it was a couple years after this. But yeah, my memories of this movie were like Sean Penn and Tim Robbins and nobody else. Like I was like, oh, Kevin Bacon's in it. Oh, Lawrence Fishburne's in it. Like I couldn't remember any of that. But yeah, all good performances, all good actors.
Yeah. Trying to think, like even the supporting characters, like the Katie. Katie's a big actress now, like the Silent Ray. I haven't really seen a lot of stuff he's done, but he's working.
Oh yeah. I'm really bad at recognizing like kid actors when they grow up.
Because he kind of looks like Haley Joel Osment or something, doesn't he? Silent Ray.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure. You mean like when he was a kid? Yeah. Sort of.
Looks nothing like Haley Joel Osment now.
Oh, yeah, I know.
He looks like a normal person. Haley Joel Osment looks like a something.
A furry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think actually the one of the underrated aspects of the film is like you concentrate on those. You forget how good the actresses are too. Like all the actresses, they're really good. Like I don't even know. I know Laura Linney plays Jimmy's wife, but who plays Dave's wife? Because she's really good.
Dave, damn it. Let me look it up. It's Marcia Gay Harden, however you say her name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought she really stood out as good.
Very,
it's an interesting contrasting styles, well, not styles, but contrasting characters too, as the two wives. Because what you get, and it's revealed very slowly, but what you get is one wife who does not support her husband enough. Like, she does not believe in Dave. And the more erratic he acts, the more she thinks like he probably did the murder, to the point that she eventually tells Jimmy that's what she thinks, sealing his fate. And then in the end, you have Laura Linney, Jimmy's wife, who supports him too much. He's like, oh, I killed my friend. I killed an innocent man. She's like, you did what you had to do.
You got to do it.
Like, okay.
You're great father.
Yeah. I didn't mean to get onto this early because we have a lot to get through before we get that. But I have to say, like, and again, the movie's not necessarily saying that. But sometimes it seems like certain movies, they just try to stress that, like, if somebody's like, you know, a good parent and loves their kids, that makes them a good person. And I mean, you find as the movie goes through that Jimmy's not a good person, right? Jimmy's not a good person. He even says like something like that towards the end. He's like, when he's about to kill Dave, he's like, am I, you know, she called me a good man. Am I a good man, Dave? It's like, no, you're definitely not. You're already a murderer before this moment. And you're kind of like the typical sort of criminal too, where you blame other people for mistakes you made and things. Because the whole thing, you know, getting to that whole thing about why he killed Harris Sr., the father, why he killed him, he was like, you know, it was because he'd rolled on him, right? Mm-hmm. And gave him up. And he says, that was when my wife was dying. And, you know, she died while I was in prison. He took that away from me, that I could have been with her. And it's just like, yeah, well, I guess so, but I mean, you still committed the crime
Right.
anyway. So you could have just been arrested and gone to jail. And then who would you blame? The cops, I assume, because they took it away from you, and that's sort of the kind of
Uh,
justification criminals have,
I think
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. So it's like, I blame him. It's just like, I don't know.
Took
I
a
guess so.
took a man who had 2 young kids at home.
Yeah.
Still sends him $500 a month though.
Yeah, so it shows that he felt some guilt about it. And he says in the confession to Dave, he says, we were both crying when I did it. I can believe that because it seemed like, he sold it to everybody that he didn't know him and he didn't like him, which wasn't true. It's like you did know him and you kind of liked him and you worked with him, and then
Right.
you felt like you had to murder him, and that's why, yeah, then you kept your distance from the family and still sent the money. So, but no, not a good man. And that's one of the things that's interesting with the movie, because for most of the start, or at least the first half, the audience is pretty much on his side because, even you can't relate to other things about him, you still think I would feel, he's gone through something terrible, and the way he's acting with the cops and everything doesn't seem that out of line, really. It's like, yeah, if I was in the same situation, I'd probably do the same thing. Because, I mean, I think when I compare myself to his character even now, I'm thinking, he's married, he's a father, he's a business owner, various other things. I'm none of those things. But I still think, yes, I think I probably would behave the same, at least for the first half of the movie. And then, like, more stuff gets peeled back and you find out more about who he really is. But for the first part, the audience is very much on his side, of course, after what he's been through.
Well, it's interesting because it does that with that character and also Dave, because, I mean, at least the first time I saw it, they kind of hint that Dave could have done it.
Well, they have it that, like, Dave thinks that even though he denies it to other people, he acts like he's capable, like he could be capable of it, which is kind of weird. Because one of the things he talks about, and going back to that scene we were saying before about where he says the names of the guys to his wife when he's watching the monster movie, he talks about the fear of turning into a monster because of what happened to him. And I mean, he uses some weird language there, but I mean, I get it, and it makes a certain amount of sense because people that were molested when they were kids, or and even worse, like what happened to him, it's not uncommon that they do grow up to do the same thing when they're older. So it's not at all unreasonable or weird for him to be worried that something in him could snap and he'd be like that, right? And something does sort of snap, which leads him to killing the guy he does kill.
Yeah. What's the time period, like, between when she's murdered and he kills Dave? Like, it's just days, right?
It's short. It's really short.
Like, you didn't give him enough time to. I mean, I guess it's vigilante justice or whatever, but
I guess he feels like once his own wife says, like, she's like, "Do you think he killed her?" And she's like, she's like, "Well, there's his own wife saying it, so that's all the confirmation I need."
She signed his death, man.
Yeah,
her doing that. I mean,
yeah.
Let the fucking cops handle it. Don't go tell this fucking maniac.
Yeah.
But he may have done it. Because, I mean, I think any father would probably act the same way, you immediately go for that guy. Because you need someone to blame,
Right. I mean, she's dead. There's no bringing her back, right? Nothing you can do. So you go to the next thing. The next thing is make whoever did it pay. But, I mean, yeah, because that's what and then, like, immediately after, because for the purposes of dramatic irony and everything like that, it's immediately after the deed that he meets up with Sean, and Sean's like, "We got them."
Yeah.
And he's just like, "No doubt." He's like, "No doubt." And he's just like, "Wow, okay. Thanks for finding my daughter's killer, Sean. You just weren't fast enough," which is more or less a confession. I mean, the movie's open-ended as far as that goes, but it seems like it'll only be a matter of time before Sean can get some evidence to nail him on it, I think. Like, he doesn't have anything concrete, but I think he'll be able to get something.
Well, what they did have was the ballistics, and they knew the gun belonged to just Ray.
Yeah.
Because it was in like a liquor store robbery when in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
And so I maybe follow that lead a little bit,
I mean, yeah, the gun is what makes Brendan, or whatever his name is, figure it all out, because they think, oh, here we go. Now we know that maybe he did do it because this was the gun his father
Right.
had. And he lies to the cops and says, I don't know anything about my father having a
Right.
gun. Then he
Right.
goes home to check because he knows exactly where the gun was, finds it missing, and then he puts it together exactly what happened. Maybe not the circumstances because it's still kind of weird. And it is weird circumstances when it comes down to like what the murder actually was, right? It's all sort
What?
of like a weird prank that went wrong.
Yeah. What did they ever say? Like why they did it?
No, and they said they don't even know. So the best they can piece it because they said like why, and it's like they don't know, I mean, which is kind of true because everything happened fast. Because the original thing was, wow, we found my dad's gun, we got to do something cool with it. Then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think they recognized her car. They knew it was somebody they knew, and so one of them laid down in the street, so she'd swerve. I assume that would have been the other one, the friend, because up on the side is where she pulled over, and the witness said, that she said something like "it's you" or "hi" or something like that. So she obviously recognized uh, Ray's son there, Ray Jr. or whatever like that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when he supposedly only meant to like wave the supposedly according again I don't know wave the gun at her or point it at her and give her a scare, but he actually shoots and it goes like through her shoulder, and then she's wounded in the shoulder, and then she like slams him with the door and runs, and they're like then they just chase after her thinking now they have to basically kill her so she won't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And I mean all the clues are there watching it in the movie. The first thing is of course is that they report the crime themselves. So I'm not saying you should necessarily recognize the voice of that kid because you don't hear him talk very much or anything like that. The friend, right? Because Ray
It
himself
was the
is,
friend talking, right?
yeah, it was the
Is
friend who called in. He's the one that calls it in because there's that
well,
hint right at the beginning where they say, "What's your name?" And he goes, and you hear him like sort of saying, "They want to know her name," and they're like, "Fuck that, we're getting out of here." And when you hear it at first, you don't know. You're like, "Okay, that tracks," but then once you find out the circumstances, it's like, "Oh, the body's not with the car." They
right.
found the body further on. You have to remember that. That's not hard for me to remember. I remembered it right away. I was like, okay, that kid saw the body. Like I remember that even the first time I saw it because he said her name or whatever. They said her. So it wasn't they didn't it wasn't like, oh, we just found blood in the car and that's all we know. He said her name, so they obviously knew female victim, and so right from the beginning, you know that. Also, when they're when the cops do find the body and Kevin Bacon, John is asking about like they said she had the wound in her shoulder, but then she was finished with another shot, but she also had been beaten, and the guy said with like a stick. Well, we see that kid walking around with a hockey stick
Mm-hmm.
in the throughout the movie, and that's what he used. So like I don't know,
So
it's just wild panicking. I guess they're just like they chase her down. He hits her with a stick a bunch of times, and like oh we
yeah.
gotta kill her, and then they shoot her, and then they run off and leave her. Then something in them makes them decide to report it. I don't know, but it makes sense. It's like it is kind of realistic in a way because it's just a stupid thing. It's not about
Kids
anything. It's just
kids do stupid shit.
yeah. I really do like that actor too. The older brother. He's really good. His performance
Yeah, I
is
was gonna
the
say
reason I got.
I've seen him in some stuff.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him at all. I'm sure I have though, but I'm just bad at recognizing people. But I thought he was really good at like talking to his brother. It's weird too because he says, "I know you can talk," but he never
Yeah.
does. So
No.
can he? I don't know what he's trying to. What's being implied there? Like I know that you fake being mute your whole life, or because I thought, oh, okay, he is going to say the name. He's going to force a name out of him. He never does talk.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when he
Yeah.
beats the shit out of them too. It's great.
Yeah.
He catches up to the friend and like knocks him to the floor and kicks him in the face several times. Then he just goes, "I'm coming back." I love that as he goes back over. But the other guy grabs the gun. But by
So
then,
yeah, this is Smalls from the Sandlot. That's what he
which
had
one?
said
The
earlier.
brother?
Yeah, the brother, the older brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Smalls. No, I never would have made that connection. See, I'm terrible at that. No, I mean he'd aged way too much. I mean, The Sandlot's like 10 years before that,
Oh
so
sure.
kids change a lot in 10 years. So, but I
Yeah,
love The Sandlot. That's a great movie.
he's done a lot of stuff. He was in a show called The Black Donnellys, which is really good.
I've heard the title, don't know what it is.
2007. It only had the one season, I think. It got canceled. It was a good show though.
Mm.
Had Olivia Wilde. Well, that was one of the first times I ever saw her.
Ah, So many crime drama movies set in and around Boston. This is another one.
I mean, pretty much everything Affleck does.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. That's kind of his roots, but I don't think Clint Eastwood has any link to it. I think he just liked the script or whatever. I would
Yeah, the
assume.
accents aren't extremely heavy.
Yeah,
Not
it's
like
better in a way because
Divided.
yeah, they kind of come and go for some characters. Like Lawrence Fishburne sounds like himself most of the time, and then it's like every once in a while he'll do the cop thing. You're like, oh, he's trying.
Yeah. He's taking a Russell Crowe direction there.
Park
Or
the car at Harvard Yard.
this is the other one. Gerard Butler. He's real bad about that too.
Oh, fuck Gerard Butler.
He's like, I'm playing like a Scottish lord, and I still sound like I'm from fucking New Zealand or something.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just it just makes me sad to think like of how much crime there is in Boston. Like we talk about how like New York has like had that reputation, but over like the last 30 some years, New York is really. I'm not saying there's still. I mean, obviously there's still crime and violent crime in New York. We're not nearly what it was. I don't think Boston seems to have gotten any better. Boston, I mean, it's probably gotten a little better, but I mean, man, Boston's bad for violent crime.
Gone
I
Baby
mean,
Gone's a good one. That's
yeah, I don't like Gone Baby Gone at all. And part of
Bastard.
it is the Boston thing so hard. Like everybody in that movie is just a hateful moron, and I can't stand it. Because like
Everyone.
I get it, because they're saying like these people don't want to they don't like cops and things. They don't want to be interviewed. But Jesus Christ, they're trying to find a missing girl, and everybody's just like threatening the shit out of them every 5 seconds. Like I can't stand that movie, and I don't like the twist in the movie. No, I don't like Gone Baby Gone at all.
Ain't no stoolie.
That movie just annoys me. But
That's Affleck too, right?
yeah, is that the first one he ever directed?
It may have been.
And that's his brother, Casey Affleck.
Yeah.
He's disappeared because I think he got accused of some stuff.
Did he?
Another one, yeah. I think Casey Affleck. It's hard to keep them all straight. It's hard to keep them all straight. But yeah, he's disappeared. But shit, I had something else about Boston, but I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, there's just a lot of those crime movies in and around Boston with the various criminals. Because I mean, going back to about like what we know about Jimmy's character, like when you first hear that he committed a robbery and did 2 years, you can easily dismiss it. You're like, okay, yeah. But then you find out, like, no, he was a lot worse than that. And also that he never fully got out of it. He could boss those twins around. Well, not twins. They're what you would call Irish twins, born 11 months apart. The Savage brothers, he can boss them around. They'll do whatever he wants. And they're full-on criminals. And that's the other thing that's interesting, too. It reminds you a little bit of the Gone Baby Gone thing. Like, the idea that, like, people in the neighborhood have this thing about, like, not talking to cops and things like that. Because even when they go to talk to Katie's two friends, the two girls, the first thing they say when they're being interviewed by the actual cops is, "We already told this to the Savages."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so?
Yeah.
They are not the cops, but they're acting like it's the same thing, which is kind of funny. And it shows sort of the mentality of these people. It's like, we already told the Savages. The cops are like, that's not us. They actually just ignore it. And they're like, yeah, we'll try us now. But yeah, it's sort of the mentality for these people. It's like, why do we have to talk to you? We told the Savages it's the same thing, right? Like, no, it's not the same thing at all. It's just people independently doing their own investigation that has nothing to do with the cops. And oh, by the way, they're criminals. But Boston.
Just trying to think. So Katie goes to the bar to hang out with her friends, which her friends look way older than she did, by the way. One looked like she was 40. One of the friends. But so they go there to hang out, and then I guess she's on the way home from that bar when they pull the prank gone wrong.
That's the other thing that's kind of weird about it, though, too. He's like, why the hell are they out that late?
It's Baston.
Yes, because I mean, they're like what, like 14, and they're just
Yeah.
prowling the streets after one. And again, going back to be having support and things like we said, like Sean Penn's wife supports him to a point that's like ridiculous. Whereas like we see Dave's wife doesn't have faith in him and support him at all, which basically gets him killed. And the interesting thing is when they're talking, when they have when they first interview, um, is it Brendan? Is it Brendan? Is that the kid's name that was going to
Yeah.
marry Katie?
The boyfriend. Yeah.
Yeah, when they interview Brendan, he's at his home with his mother, and his mother is so annoyed by finding out that she was, because it works both ways. You know, the whole thing was Jimmy didn't want any of them associating with his family, and it was kind of vice versa too, because she's so annoyed to find out that she was dating him, and that she was gonna, well, not just that, but the plan was to elope, right? She even says, like, you were just gonna leave without telling me. He's like, I was gonna tell you, Mom. But anyway, that's because then when the cops just like, well, okay, so where were you last night? And he's like, I went to bed. I got home and I went to bed. And they say to his mother, can you confirm that? And she goes, I can confirm that he closed his door at blah blah blah, and that he came down
Thanks,
for
Mom.
breakfast. And she's like, I can't. She's like, I can't confirm that he didn't sneak out. Like, Jesus, thanks a lot, Mom.
I think that's the culprit. That's why they were out so late, because they have a shitty mother.
Yeah. Although what she says too about Jimmy's right. He's like, he doesn't want you. Like, he doesn't want you. He thinks he's better than our family. He's just a thief. It's like he's worse than a thief. He's a goddamn killer. And he did kill your husband, who you think is no good. Because that's the other thing. When she gets mad about him planning to elope, she's like, just like your father. The whole thing is like, Ray probably wasn't a great guy or anything, and he was a criminal and a fuck up. But he didn't abandon his family. But everybody thought he did when he disappeared, because they never actually found his body, right?
Well, they never even filed him like a missing person.
Well, yeah, and Brendan chose to believe that he was alive because they kept getting the money, and just said, who else would send it?
Right.
So that's the other thing too. It might not be 100% just guilt and remorse on Jimmy's part. This is a good way of making them think that he's still alive.
True. Yeah, making himself feel better too.
Yeah.
Take away a little bit of his guilt. Well, I'm giving him money, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the three main characters are never in the same scene as adults. Not all three.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I kept waiting for there to be a scene where there was.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too how it, like, I mean, that's obviously done on purpose, and it shows sort of how they interact with each other, because there's a part where Dave, after he'd spoken to Jimmy, because Dave had maintained contact a little better because their wives are cousins.
Right.
So they've always been around each other. So he's, over at Jimmy's house during the, I don't know, wake type period, or, when people are over there. And there he goes outside to smoke, and he and Jimmy have their little conversation. And then later, when he goes back and has one of his conversations, when I talk about Dave, when Dave goes back and talks to his wife, he says something like, he comments on sort of their estrangement, but he says something like, it took something like this for us to be friends again. So he thinks of Jimmy as his friend, and he feels bad about what happened. And then there's a part also when somebody, I think it's again, he's talking to his wife, and she says something about, I spoke to Sean, the cop again, and she says, he was your friend. And he's just like, well, we aren't friends now, or something like that. He's like, can't you tell we're not friends? So you feel bad for that too, because Sean at no point had any animosity toward Dave. In fact, he felt really bad. And he was the one that kept defending him to his partner, because Whitey kept saying, we got to look at this guy. And it's just like, he's just like, no, Dave didn't do this, and he kept defending him. So it was interesting there that, like, the way things played out, he thought of Jimmy as his friend, and he felt bad about what happened to Jimmy. And Jimmy's the one that winds up easily believing that he did it and killing him for it. And he thinks Sean is out to get him, whereas Sean is actually the whole time, he's just doing his job, but he doesn't believe it, and he's defending him from Whitey, who really wanted to finger him for it.
Well,
he said, on paper, this guy's already guilty, is what he said. He's a messed up guy because of what happened, and he's hasn't had steady employment and blah blah blah. Yeah, so he won.
They didn't have enough to get a conviction on him. I mean, if he did go on trial. You know, they didn't have any forensic evidence other than, I mean, hell, they knew that he had blood on him, right? Or
They
blood in
had
his
forensic
trunk.
evidence in his car, but he
But
played them out of that because it was, oh, the car, people stole my car. You filed it yourself because why he bent the rules there a bit to bring the car in. So he said that it was stolen, so he was able to bring it in. So you filed that report. So
right.
if the criminals who stole my car got some blood in there, it wouldn't have anything to do with me. So yeah,
But I mean, the DNA would not match hers. So I mean, that he's, you know, obviously not guilty for her murder.
yeah. I don't know how specific they get on the DNA there anyway, because they mentioned blood type. They say like blood type B or something.
Fuck
I
that.
don't
They
know.
got DNA. They've got
Yeah,
DNA in '04.
yeah. I don't know.
I mean, that's the
They
king
just
of
don't. They
forensics
just
right
don't.
there.
They just don't really go into that. Is all I'm saying. They do mention
Yeah,
like blood type. But they never say anything about DNA. But I mean, I guess they could do that. But yeah,
yeah.
because I mean, when the movie's over, several crimes have been committed, and things aren't the way they're supposed to be. Because when you think about it this way, because yeah, although they do figure it out, because by the time he's already dead, the cops are already have found the body of the guy he killed. So he if he had lived, he still would have been going to jail.
Yeah.
But still, it's a different thing going to jail and being fucking killed. So yeah, that his kid, you feel really bad for his kid. His kid still would have been had a hard time because his dad would have been in jail, which would have been hard. But his dad is dead, gone completely. So you feel really bad for his kid,
I mean,
who he
and
had a good relationship with, right? Like, I
yeah,
think that's the one thing they show you through the movie. It's like he doubts himself and thinks that like he could turn into a monster, but like how well he does with his kid, I think really shows that no, that's not going to happen. Like
mm-hmm.
he's messed up and everything, and that's sad. But he's not gonna he's not gonna flip into something else and hurt people. Well, he did hurt a guy, but you kind of understand why.
Yeah. And that's the exact. He told Jimmy the truth. You know, the exact truth of what he did. You know, because he was a pedophile. He had 3 prior convictions. Um, and they kill him anyway. He shouldn't have admitted to it because he was going to kill him regardless.
Shouldn't have admitted to what?
To killing Katie.
Oh yeah, I know. I guess he
He
did
kind of
because he
made him
thought. Well,
confess.
I mean, he thought that was his only way to live.
He should know better than that.
I
But,
don't know. Somebody's pointing a gun at you. I don't know what you
true.
might do. Because I know a lot of people say like, if you're innocent, you don't confess. But the guys gave you one way out, even if it was a lie, which is if you tell me, I'll let you
Yeah.
live. You can be turned into the cops. But I mean, I'm sure even Dave in his messed up state of mind probably thought, but I don't know.
So Katie's dead. Dave's dead. The pedophile's dead. And Jimmy's going to prison.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's what we're getting to. I mean, Jimmy has a little bit of time, but it seems like it's only a matter of time before. And I mean, that's really what's in the last shot where they see each other at the parade. Where Sean gives him the little, and he's just like,
Yeah.
It's like, what can you do?
Isn't that true? Like if you don't have a body, you can't convict someone of murder. Isn't that right?
Well, it seems I'm sure Dave's body's going to be found.
Yeah. Well, the last one wasn't.
I know the last one because he says, killed him right here, put him in the Mystic, the river. Exactly. The last one wasn't, but I mean, I'm pretty sure, like immediately, like following this, like Sean was like, get people down and check that river. Now I know what you're thinking, like, well, he didn't know the specifics of the last murder, so why would he? Because he knows that bar is why. I would assume. I mean, that's when the movie gets really sinister too, is and there's another little bit of repetition or irony. It's not irony, I guess. It's that early back in 1975 when they were kids, Dave got in a car he never should have gotten into, and then the same thing happens when the savages come to pick him up.
That's true.
They coerce him to get in the car. In both cases, it's not like, oh, if he didn't get in, he'd be fine, because it seems like though neither were going to take no for an answer, right? Like, but still, it's the same. It's still the same thing, right? Like, because if he said no to the kidnapper guys, they probably would have just grabbed him or grabbed one of the others. And it's the same thing. If he said no to the savages, they'd be like, even though it's broad daylight, they still probably would have grabbed him. But still, it does come down to that. Like both times, he got
Yeah.
in a car that he shouldn't have gotten into, and this one
If he
is
said no, they would have put his ass in that car one way or another.
yeah. But still, you get that imagery of seeing both times him get in the car with two people in the front, and it doesn't go well for him either time. So there is that. But that's where it really gets sinister too. Is like, and it's sort of like, I mean, by this point we already know stuff about Sean, but that's sort of kind of the reveal. It's even before Sean has taken him outside and confesses to murdering Just Ray, because just he comes in because they've been sitting at the bar. They've been sitting in the bar getting drunk for a while with the savages, and then just out of nowhere, Jimmy shows up, and he's wearing like a black leather coat and black gloves. Oh my god! So yeah, this is gonna take a bad turn.
Yeah.
Who the hell wears black gloves inside a bar? It's like, it's not even like he's going to put them on later for the purposes of the murder. He just comes in wearing them. It's very powerful, scary.
Yeah. Well, we all knew that where that was going to go.
Yeah. But I have some other stuff about Boston. It's not really a big deal, but it just, for one thing, like everybody has fucking nicknames, right? I'm not even talking about how that's what happened to Ray. It's like Ray, there were already a bunch of Rays with nicknames. They couldn't come up with something before him, so they gave him just Ray. Even though they find out later one of the savages called him like Ray Jingles or whatever because of always carrying change, which is corroborated by his son. His son even remembers that, even though he died when he was 6 or disappeared when he was 6. He remembered that much. But like, this is easy to miss because things happen quickly and it's not that important. But early in the movie, the day the murder is discovered, of course, Jimmy's character has been with the rest of his family for the first communion thing. But at the same time that they haven't quite found the body, but they found the car and they're looking for the body right in that park area. So then part of like the foreshadowing or whatever you want to call it in the movie is like Jimmy, he can't find his daughter. He doesn't have any reason to think anything happened to her, but you can tell like he has maybe a sick, sinking feeling something bad did happen, right? And maybe that's what draws him to that crowd because when the cops close down that area around the park, there's a big crowd watching, right? And Jimmy makes his way to the crowd to find out what's happening. And he meets a guy that he knows. He calls Ed and asks Ed, "Hey, what's the situation? What's going on here?" And he tells him some stuff that he knows. And then there's a part where he says that some other guy he knew saw divers going in because at first they thought, there might be a body in the thing. Do you remember the name of the guy that Ed says saw it? Mm-mm. The guy's name was Boo Bear Duncan or Durkin. Boo Bear Durkin. He said Boo Bear Durkin saw some frogmen going in there. Like, what the fuck kind of neighborhood and weird Boston world is this? But I believe it. Well, I believe it 100%. But
the problem is they've got like 5 names that they just use. Like your Sal, Paul, Paulie, Sally.
Well, that was one of the problems they said about Ray, right? Like there's a bunch of Rays. Yeah.
So
they've got all this, and they have all the standard Catholic names like Sean. A lot of Seans.
Sean, Jimmy, David, all Catholic. Yeah.
It also makes me think of that scene, speaking of Boston, and it's got, of course, and it's done masterfully by Marky Mark himself. But do you remember that scene in Ted where he names, like rapid fire, he names all sort of the white trash Catholic girl names? Like, that's masterfully done and so good too. Yeah. Where he names them all off because it's a bunch. It's just like Tammy Lynn and all these. It's great. Yeah. That's a great scene. I haven't seen it all the time, but
yeah, I think I may have seen all of it. I know I've seen some of the first one.
Yeah, you don't need to see the second one. The first one's fine. Second one's kind of useless. But that's a scene early on because he's guessing the name of Ted's new girlfriend. But it's a really good scene. I have to give Marky Mark credit because he just rhymes off like a whole bunch of them really fast, which I couldn't do.
Right. Say hello to your mother for me.
Wahlberg's got some talent. I won't deny it. And of course, he's in The Departed. He's one of the most Boston characters of all of The Departed because he's like the really mean and rude cop. Like everything he says is a goddamn insult.
Yeah, It's always got fuck in it too. Like
Yeah,
I think he says that word like so many times in that movie, and he's not even in the movie very much.
no. It's funny because they point out like part of like DiCaprio's character is like he has kind of a temper, right? Because the whole thing is he beats the hell out of those guys in the store, and he also tries to beat that guy who's like cranberry juice. What are you on your period? Like that's not just him being undercover. Like that's the real him like flipping out and beating him. So you always think of like what kind of like great control it takes for him to like not go after Wahlberg, because Wahlberg spends like every breath just insulting him in that movie. In the scene. Of course, he has to because his superior is looking on, but.
Right.
And there's some funny stuff there too, like where Wahlberg has the back and forth with the other guy he's with, Alec Baldwin, and he says something like, he's like, what did he say? He says something like, I'm trying to think. It's like, how's your father? He's like, he's fine. He's tired from fucking your mother or something like that. It's like, we get it. That's how they talk.
You know your regular accent? Can you turn that up? Turn that up to 11, please.
Yeah, that's really how it goes.
There's all those guys. Damon. I don't know where DiCaprio's from, but I know Damon and Wahlberg are both Boston guys, aren't they?
Yeah.
Let's go see the fucking Sox play.
Go Sox. Yeah, there's a little baseball talk at the very start of the movie, but then it drops off.
You remember the old Jimmy Kimmel skit? No ma.
Yeah. See, I didn't know what that meant for years.
I knew it was a player. Yeah,
I had
didn't
no
follow
idea
baseball.
what they were saying or referring to. I didn't even know that for so long. I was like, I don't know what that is. That was a mystery to me for years.
Rachel Dratch may have been the girlfriend.
Yeah. No, I remember the skit. There were a whole bunch of them. They did them for years. And
yeah. Jimmy Kimmel used to be kind of funny.
Yeah, there's a good line in one of them too, because it was one of the ones from like late on, like 15 years in or something. It might have been one that, Jimmy had already left and he'd come back. I think he had left, right? And he was hosting, right? So they did one of those sketches again. And at one point he's like, they're talking to these teenagers and like, how old are you guys? He's like, it's never been determined.
Yeah. Man, that like the Tonight Show really saved his ass because he wasn't really doing gangbusters in the movies.
No, or like shows. I mean, it almost seems like a waste because I don't like that. I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't funny stuff, but I've never been a fan of those sorts of late night talk shows. They're not really for me.
I mean, I was, yeah,
but because it just seems sad because when I think of somebody like what's his name? He came after. Andy Samberg. Like Andy Samberg made a great transition, went right off and made a really good show for the cop show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's like, did Jimmy Fallon ever get a chance for something like that? Like, I don't know. I mean,
it was a while.
He could have done a show like something like that, but no, he just went right into like talk show stuff.
He did like Taxi or something Taxi
with Queen Latifah.
Yeah.
And there's a great moment of that in there's an episode of 30 Rock where Tracy, who is playing more or less himself, but in that version, right, Tracy is a former movie star. He's the one who came in and like sort of saved their show. It's a former movie star. And he finds out about like the death of some celebrity. And then like a few hours later, he finds out about the death of another celebrity. And everyone's like, and somebody gets it in his head that about the rule of threes. Things happen in threes. So he thinks he's next. So Tracy's going around thinking, rule of threes, 3 celebrities, I'm going to die next or something like that. And there's a part where he runs into Jimmy Fallon as himself, who at this point would have had his own show. And they're talking, and he thinks like if he can get near like famous people, maybe death will take them instead of him. But he doesn't actually recognize Jimmy Fallon for anything, stuff like that. He's just like, oh, he's like, you work in this building? He's like, yeah, I've got a show here. It's a pretty good show. And he's like, and he names the show. It means nothing to Tracy, stuff like that. He's like, no, I mean like famous. And Jimmy Kimmel goes, I was in a movie with Queen Latifah once or something like that. And then later when he's trying to call him back, he's just like, wait, get back here. Queen Latifah's friend.
That show was good sometimes.
I like 30 Rock. I always liked it. It's one of the few comedy shows I watched.
Oh, and Jimmy Kimmel did another movie. It was like it may have been Drew Barrymore, like romantic comedy that was also set in Boston. Like I think it's even in the title. It's like,
Oh, it's the baseball one where he plays
yeah,
like a insane Fox Sox fan. I never saw it, but yeah, that's right. I
I
was
never
going to say
saw
he
it
was in
either.
another movie, but yeah,
But that's all I
it
could
has
think
some
of
sort
that
of
he's done.
baseball pun title, I think.
Yeah, first pitch, some dumb shit.
Fuck Affleck, who like wouldn't who refused to wear a Yankees hat for Gone Girl.
Ah, I respect it.
I don't. You're a goddamn actor.
I respect it.
I don't know, man. I'm a big sports person too, but I mean, I can think of teams I hate. I could wear a Boston Bruins hat for a goddamn movie. Sure, I could,
Well,
and they
I
make me
mean,
sick.
just I mean, this
Speaking
dude
of
grew
Boston,
up. This dude grew up hating the Yankees. Everybody hates the Yankees unless you're a Yankees fan, you know.
I know I'm on the other side of it. I'm a Leafs fan. All of Canada hates the Leafs except for Leafs fans.
Mm.
And the difference is the Yankees are successful and the Leafs aren't. So it's 10 million times worse because Yankees fans seem like, hate us all you want, bitches, championships, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah.
Where we get to hear chants of 1967 over and over again. It's fucking hell. But it's like falling in love. You can't choose it. I can't just be like, okay. I mean, I tried. I threw my stuff away and everything. I tried. Can't do it. I tried to give up on them.
Wait, was I saying Jimmy Kimmel earlier? I meant Jimmy
Yeah,
Fallon.
Fallon. I know. I think I might have said
Sorry,
Kimmel a couple times too.
sorry.
But I might
I
have.
get
Oh,
those.
you got me saying Kimmel too, but yeah, we both meant Fallon.
As I was
I
searching
mean, they're
here.
both Jimmy guys with late night
Yeah.
shows. There's too many, but yeah, Jimmy Fallon. I might have said it too. I can't remember. We'll roll it back to tape. But obviously, yes, we both meant Jimmy Fallon of Saturday Night Live.
I was trying to see what all this guy has done. What was the name of that movie? I bet it's really stupid.
Which one?
The baseball movie.
Might be Fever Pitch. Now that I think about it,
I think you may be right.
I've seen at least a scene or two from it on TV. I want that kind of thing makes me wonder about Drew Barrymore's career. Like, did she feel sorry for guys like that to be in movies with them, or did she think it was a good idea? Or was it she was a big star and then very quickly wasn't, and she just had to take it? I mean, she's in like 3 Adam Sandler movies. Why would she
She's
do
done
that?
tons of those.
And they
Fucking
weren't
drunk
successful
on.
movies. I'm not.
Were they
These
not?
weren't the success. These were not the successful Sandler movies. These were just crap ones. And
I
I
don't
know, and I
know.
know there's a difference because there's ones that I think are crap that were still successful. I know that. I'm just saying I don't think any of the ones
I
she's in.
think
She's in like what, like
50.
51st Dates
I
and
think that movie was successful, wasn't it? I mean, it was
Blended. Sure
popular.
as fuck wasn't. Blended was not successful. I can tell you that much.
I didn't see that one. I don't think. Wait, is that the one where he's married to like a really hot like Hispanic chick?
I mean, there's like at least 3 of those
That's true.
because
Yeah,
he's married to Selma Hayek in 2 movies.
you've said that before that he always has like the hottest wife in all the movies he's in.
Yeah. He's married to Kate Beckinsale in Click. Christ. But yeah, you can get quite the list. I mean, I won't retread old territory, but the epitome of awful for me, not just for his bad movies, but for that whole theme, is Just Go With It. Because in Just Go With It, you're supposed to be on his side, but why the fuck would you be? He's such a piece of shit in that movie.
They're the same person. Yeah. In my mind, they pretty much are Dan. I don't like either one of them, but
Jimmy Kimmel?
yeah, Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon.
I used to like Jimmy Kimmel. He used. I mean, back when he was super politically incorrect and he like had
Right.
to flip it all around. Not that I'm not one of those people like, oh, he's too PC now. Like, no, I'm just saying. It
No.
turns out like that was sort of what made him good. Is kind of what it means.
Well,
Like,
he's backpedaled on all that now, you know.
you kind of have to when you were like the host of the Man Show, for Christ's sake.
I guess, yeah, whatever. That's a different topic for another day.
Well, I'm just saying. I don't think the stuff on the Man Show really flies in today's society.
No, I
Climate.
definitely wouldn't. Not, especially not the kid. Like when the Man Show kid, I think they call him little fat kid. They get him to go out and say all kinds of. It's just really funny. A lot
Yeah.
of the
I
stuff
mean,
they
I
make.
remember a lot of the bits. I don't remember that one. I mean, certainly they had the women they literally called juggies and would make them jump on trampolines and stuff. But
I definitely watched the show.
yeah, I watched it. There was even an earlier version of it with two other guys before we got to Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, it was. Was like Bill Burr one of them?
Might have been, yeah.
There's somebody. Oh, fuck, I can't remember.
I don't like Bill Burr, but give him credit in that he's never backpedaled on anything. Like, I've never found him funny or anything like that, but at least he was never like, I gotta change my image and take it. Like, he's the same as he ever was. So I
That's
respect
true.
that, even though I'm not a fan of him. I have to respect that.
He's not my favorite or anything. I mean, I like his stuff. Okay, his stand up. I mean, dude,
I really don't like him showing up in Star Wars. I can tell you that much. And that's one of my favorite episodes too. I love that episode, but I don't know why he has to be in it just to distract the shit out of me.
One of the first episodes in Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, in the first season.
I've actually seen that.
Third season's coming out soon. I'm actually anticipating it. I meant to watch Andor and then I didn't. Because everybody was like, Andor is like boring for 3 episodes, then gets amazing. It seems to be what most people say. They're like, 3 episodes, just stick with it. We promise it gets good. And I just
Is that the Boba Fett show?
No, no. I didn't stick with Boba Fett. See, I liked everything I saw of Mandalorian. I watched 2 seasons of it, liked all of it. I watched Boba Fett for about 4 or 5 episodes and just completely lost patience. It seemed like a pointless thing. Like, why make a Boba Fett show when you just did Mandalorian? You have all these other options. So one thing I'll give Andor is at least it's about something else. But the Boba Fett show just felt so unnecessary to me. It's like, you just did a whole thing about like a bounty hunter in Mandalorian armor.
Yeah.
And you even have Boba Fett show up at the end of like season 2. He shows up. It's like, now you're going to go back and give Boba Fett his own show. Like,
it's just so much now.
You know,
I feel like they really have done too much too fast, I think, with the property.
Mostly I accept the Disney canon, but I don't really with Boba Fett. Boba Fett's way better in Legends canon. He's just so cool. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I just liked about Mandalorian, because at the time it was refreshing because it wasn't Jedi centered, because everything was about Jedi, which is kind of funny because I mean, I did of course watch, even though I was not in a Star Wars mood, I did watch Obi-Wan, which of course is Jedi centered, but that's an exception for me because he's my favorite Jedi, so of course I was going to like the show about him. It's not great or anything. It doesn't seem to have the same budget as the other shows, but it's fine. And it's the other thing where, like, I don't know how many blanks they need to fill in. Like, we don't need to see everything that everybody ever does. Because I don't know, I kind of didn't like the idea of Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, meeting then. But they do. Because before that existed, all you knew was, like, he never saw him as Vader until he was an old man and was with Luke. But in this, it's like, no, they had at least one run-in. I don't know. It doesn't ruin it or anything, but and it is a pretty good scene. But
I think these guys may have taken over after Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel left. Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope.
Oh, yeah, it was Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope. Yeah, the main reason I remember that is because there's a part on. Speaking of a comedian, I like Daniel Tosh's show from years ago, where there's something about we're gonna bring back the man show. He's like, and not the Jimmy Kimmel one, the original ones. Yeah, so he did like a scene where they recreated the set and everything. It was Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope. It's too bad. Like, just another thing. Like, I'm not gonna go on about Joe Rogan, but if he had just stayed where he was years ago, I would have liked him fine. Now I can't fucking stand him. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, late 90s. I was a Joe Rogan fan, but
news radio, Fear Factor, stuff like that.
This is the problem with like getting to know people. Like, it's one thing to see them play a character on a show, but Joe Rogan we get to know because he's out there blabbing his real life opinions all over the place on his podcast and everything, and showing up everywhere. And I don't want to hear your real life opinions, Joe Rogan. I do not give a shit. But I liked you when you played comedic roles or did stand-up. And I know some stand-up has opinions, but it's it's all for comedic effect. But I don't need that. Anyway, I really don't like Joe Rogan, which is too bad, because again, it feels like I would have liked him fine if he didn't have to go do all this other stuff. But what does Joe Rogan care? He's like a zillionaire and does whatever he
Yeah.
wants. And,
I'm not crazy about him. I mean, I listen to his show, depending on who the guest is every once in a while, but he definitely goes hard on certain things that are going to rub people the wrong way. But I mean, he's not exactly like, I mean, I know he's painted like as a staunch conservative, but I don't think his political beliefs really, reflect that. But he has guns, he hunts, shit like that.
Well, he likes to be annoying by like acting like he's not on either side, right? He's like, it's fun for me because the leftists I say things and they agree with, and the right wingers I say things and they agree with, and then it all gets confused. So it annoys both sides. Like he thinks he's such like an agitator, right? People like that. Like I don't want to be a pick a side person or anything like that, but I don't know. I do think it's a little disingenuous sometimes. I love those people that just stand back and just like, well, both sides are blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, fine. But what can you exactly do about that? Nothing.
Yeah.
But you can pretend you're superior to it all, I suppose. But I mean, in a way, it's like, aren't you a hypocrite because you talk about like how the U.S. is too that much? Because I mean, it's not quite the same here. Like we're not dominated by two political parties and two ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that in Canada, but there's plenty of other stuff in between. There's stuff in between in the U.S. too, but it gets all lost in this, red versus blue battle that they do.
Well,
this culture war. It was political. It was politics for a while. Now it's all culture war too.
I think social media is a big.
Of course, like they have like entire accounts. It's like I'm gonna trigger the left. I'm gonna trigger the right. It's like, oh fuck.
Because I've never seen it more divided. The parties like. Because if you like, okay, I like this, I like that. Okay, well, you're on this side. Well, no, I don't. I also agree with this. I think that's the intelligent way to go about it. It's not a.
And I'm sure that's what Joe Rogan sort of claims about his own stances, but I don't know. I think he's an agitator in a lot of ways. And you could say, well, that's part of being a comedian. Okay, fine. All I know is the last like 10 years or so, he's revealed himself to be somebody I don't like, which is too bad because I liked him in the old days. And maybe he was always like that, probably. But again, I didn't know. That's what I like. I like not knowing. I like being able to enjoy like actors' performances or comedians and not really knowing about their stupid, shitty personality.
Yeah.
Now we know.
I don't care how you feel about it.
But now we know everybody's, personalities and beliefs, and so that makes it harder.
Well, you've got an Alyssa Milano, and on the other side, you've got a Randy Quaid.
I know.
They're both fucking crazy. They're both out of their fucking mind, Looney Tunes, but they feel very differently about things.
As I said, like speaking of Sean Penn, like I like Sean Penn, and he says like politically like things like I more or less agree with, but he's just such an arrogant dumbass, and he's one of the worst writers. Like oh my god, have you ever read anything he's written? He's like written a couple books, and they're just garbage. And I mean, they're like they make Twilight look good. They're that bad. So that's his level of writing. He's just a smug bastard.
Last thing I saw of him, he was over in he brought his Oscar or some award he won recently to Zelensky.
Yeah. See, that's what is annoying to me. Like his heart is in the right place on stuff like Ukraine, but he can't help but make it about himself.
Yeah.
Right? So that bothers me.
Oh, here we go. That's a hot take.
I always forget that actually.
I like Chris. He was good in Reservoir Dogs, at least. And Footloose?
I don't agree with that. But yeah, Footloose. I don't think anybody was good in Reservoir Dogs. But...
Oh, he's like, what does he call the guy? It's like his father, but he calls him like Daddy. Come on, Daddy.
I remember a little bit. It's been a long, long, long time, but some of these things stay with me.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Reservoir Dogs, but it's all right.
It's a funny quote by Lawrence Fishburne, by the way, because of what I'd said that about the comparison of the two wives. Lawrence Fishburne says that he's the other wife. That he played Kevin Bacon's wife.
That's funny. Got more screen time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing with Kevin Bacon's wife, it seems so insignificant.
Yeah, it seems so. The main thing I think it's there for is that there's one thing to feel good about when the movie ends. Because,
That's
like you
the
said,
happy
when the
ending.
movie's over, this person's dead, she's still dead. He killed the wrong guy. He's probably going to go to jail. I'm not saying, and as you said, yeah, pedophile's dead. Uh, yeah, people aren't going to say that's a tragedy, but it's a loss of life, whatever, like that. And yeah, but it's like that's the one hope, and that that kid's lost his father and all this stuff, and she's lost her husband. And it's like the one hopeful thing is like he's going to reconcile with his wife.
And he's
So
got his
that's
kid.
and yeah, he's going to get to meet his kid Nora. Yeah, so
Nora.
I think that's what it's there for. It's like to give us one little hopeful thing when the movie's so bleak otherwise.
Yeah.
There's also a pretty poignant conversation he has. Again, it's not really a conversation because she doesn't talk, but where he's just talking to her, and it's nothing too original or anything we've seen in movies before, but it does, since he gets a little less focused than the others because he's more doing his job, while the rest of is he mentions how beaten down by the job he is, because he says, I saw a murder. There's just another murder. He's like, everybody stays dead. He can't bring them back. And he's just like, we send these guys to prison, but that's where they were going to end up anyway. He's like, it all feels so pointless. So, yeah. And it comes back, like I said, about being a cop in a violent place like Boston. Because, if you're a cop in certain places, maybe once or twice in your career you see something really bad. The rest of the time, it's not that bad. But you live in certain places, like, that's all it is. It's just like an onslaught of horrific tragedies and crimes against humanity. Because think about how that movie opens, what his introduction is. His introduction is he's already at another murder. It's a road rage murder, right? Like some guy keeps saying, like, this guy kept cutting me off. He kept cutting me off. So you killed him. Like, this is like our introduction to Kevin Bacon's character. Here he is checking out a murder, and now he's going to go to another one, except this one's a lot more dramatic, and it turns out he has a personal stake in it. But it's just like it's a cycle of violence. Murder, murder, murder.
It's not too far from the truth, I guess.
Yeah. So I just think, how draining would that be to have that be your everyday job?
Yeah. I probably couldn't do it because I'd take that stuff home with me.
Yeah. And a lot of them say, that's the key, is like the way to be able to separate it and not take it. Yeah. Some
easier
of that
said
stuff,
than done, right?
Easier said than done. Especially when part of your job is to show up and tell people about their dead relatives.
I can't remember I watched a documentary not too long ago on some killer. It may have been Richard Ramirez or something.
Yeah.
And these, it had the cops. They were interviewing the cops that worked on the case, and they were all breaking down, because there was a while they couldn't find that guy. He was just out there killing, and everyone was blaming the cops for not being able to find the guy.
Yeah.
Or it may not have been Ramirez. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they were like, you could tell it messed them up, permanently.
Yeah. Well, you see some of those cops, and they kind of do bend the rules a little bit because they can't help but be involved. So they are human. Sometimes they say, you're not supposed to do this, but I spoke to the wife or the mother or whatever like that, and I promised her that I'd get it. You're not supposed to do that, but in the moment he's human, and he's just like, I had to give her something. I promised.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you talk about something like those cold case things. Reminds me of a pretty good line from one of the early seasons, because I just recently, a couple months ago, watched the first 4 seasons of Criminal Minds again, because I hadn't seen them in ages. So I've forgotten so much. I remember pieces here and there, but there are a few things I forgot. There's a pretty good episode that sort of refers to it doesn't follow up on a cold case, but it's something like there was some murder back in the 70s, and now they're here, and it might have something to do with it. I don't know, something like that, right? So they show up in this small town, and there's the cop there, and he's pretty old now, and he was on the case back in the 70s, and he never closed the case. And it turns out, and they solved the case, and it turns out to be related to the one he did. And then he's having a talk with, I think it's Gideon at that time, right? I think Gideon was still around, but anyway, he was the older section chief guy. And he says something he says something like, you got any ongoing cases that have been going on a long time, something like that. And he's and Gideon says something like, I got one that's 14 years or something like that. And the guy goes, don't let it get to 15. You just sort of, again, I know that's not real, but I think it does reflect a bit of reality. Like that does
Mhm.
eat away at cops. They remember these things. It sticks with them. But yeah, you see that in a lot of documentaries about true crime where they. So yeah,
Is that show worth watching? I've never watched it.
Criminal Minds.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, like a lot of things, over time it gets repetitive. But I would say the first like 6 seasons probably, and it's like another thing too, because like from seasons like 3 to 7, the cast is pretty much locked in, which is nice. After that, it's like this person leaves, that person leaves, somebody else comes in, but you
Ice
get
T comes in.
but like the classic, the classic cast get locked in around season 3. Like, because one of the things I honestly forgotten is like that Paget Brewster was on that show, and she was part of the classic. She played a character called Prentice. In fact, she left for a while and came back, and she did actually come back, but I forgot that she actually, because I was like, why didn't I like Prentice? Because I was like, Prentice seems fine. It turns out I didn't like Prentice because way back in the day, when in the first season and going into the second, there was a different brunette, and I liked her, but they wrote her off the show. I don't know why, but they wrote her off the show in an interesting way. I won't give away what happens, but they actually have something that happens in the show that makes her leave, and Prentice is her replacement. So that's why I didn't like Prentice, because I actually liked that character, and I just kind of resented Prentice. There's nothing wrong with Prentice; she's fine. But I completely forgotten that character even existed because I hadn't seen those episodes in so many years. I was like, oh shit, that's right. There was what's her name there, you know. But it's like, yeah. So I always forget Mandy Patinkin or whatever. That's Gideon. He's like the
Okay.
old. He. I think he literally gets killed, but he left on purpose because he thought the show was too violent. It bothered him, and he gets replaced by Joe Mantegna. So really, so the classic version kicks in when you have Paget Brewster and Joe Mantegna join. Is really what it is.
Yeah, Manny Patinkin's like, I'm gonna go do this show on Showtime about a terrorist.
Yeah, I have no idea what he did after that.
Because that's what is it? The fucking Claire Danes. You've been
Oh,
watching
Homeland.
Homeland, yeah.
Oh yeah, that is
That's
him. He's got like all
yeah,
beard and stuff. That's what
beard,
I'm
yeah.
thinking of. I tried watching Homeland, but man, is it's awfully racist in places. I get it. It's kind of like one of those post 9/11
Well,
kind
yeah.
of keep trying to let you know the climate, but I'm like, they go a little far on it, don't
It
they?
doesn't
Like,
it doesn't play well now. Yeah.
I mean, plus it also did that whole. It's kind of funny because like people will talk again about things getting too PC or woke or whatever. I don't want to use that word, but it's like because sometimes you'll see an article about something and you're like, oh come on, you're kidding, right? But I remember a few years ago seeing an article, and Homeland was part of it. Wasn't other things like sort of about like it's like can like a camera filter be racist? It's like can it? It's like I guess it can because it's true. When you looked at Homeland and a lot of shows and movies from that era, it's like anytime they showed like the Middle East, it's shot through like this weird thing to make everything look muted and yellow, which is
Yeah.
not actually what it looked like. Because it's like, look how horrible and foreign and terrible this place is with its yellow sky. It's like I think they have blue skies over there too, man.
They're animals.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, I wanted to like Homeland because I like Claire Danes, or I wanted to get sort of. I liked her as I guess when she was a teenager. I never really liked her as an adult. I was trying to reclaim Claire Danes. I was like, can I like her again? But I don't know because I like My So Called Life and
I mean, she's
Romeo
good
and
in that
Juliet and
show. I
stuff.
mean, she cries like every scene. It's kind of annoying, but
Yeah,
I've seen like the first 3 seasons. I gave up because it was just
I would say. I mean, I didn't watch that far. I only watched maybe 6 or 7 episodes. I think Criminal Minds was a lot better, but
okay.
Criminal
Well, yeah, I know people love it,
Minds.
so
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most popular shows, but like anything, it went on too long, and but there's a lot of good episodes. I would say, especially in the early seasons. I mean, it's an interesting cast. I think there's some good. I mean, there's always some annoying stuff in there,
there's just
but
so many of those cop drama shows that I haven't gotten to.
I
Just
mean, I
because
liked
they're
it because it's serial killer focused. Like I said, we talked about this before when we brought it up. It's like how the world has changed. Like serial killers are still a thing, but
yeah,
not like the way TV like that would have you believe. And we've said many times because of things like technology and forensics and things like that. And serial killers still happen, but they've really been replaced by the sort of the spree killer, the mass killer.
they're I think they usually get caught before they end up being a serial killer. Like, what is that, like 3 or something? Is a
Yeah.
number to it.
Yeah, we've had this conversation many times because we talk about serial killers and movies and documentaries and stuff. It's like, in the 70s and 80s, it was really the golden age because it's like there weren't cameras anywhere. People thought they could just pick up hitchhikers. They didn't have the DNA evidence. So it was like, it was open season for these guys. So, so it's a lot more difficult. But Criminal Minds sort of reverts still. It's like, you want the old school serial killer that like tortures people in their basement and, paints like biblical messages of blood on the wall. It's there for you in Criminal Minds. Like every once in a while they do something different. Like here's somebody who's like bombing people, or here's some international incidents. But most of the time they stick to like twisted serial killers, and that's why I like it. One of the first episodes I ever saw, I was I wasn't even living here yet. I don't think, or no, I had to have been. I was, but it was weird because I remember seeing it in a hotel. So my family might have visited. My family must have visited, and they were staying in a hotel, and I remember watching. And it was from about 2007 or so, because that's maybe when I started watching. And I don't know what season they were on. It might be the 3rd season. So I went back and but it had Frankie Muniz or whatever his name is back in the middle on it. It was such a bizarre episode. It was like, because it was actually really unrealistic compared to most of their episodes. Like their episodes are all kind of unrealistic as far as like the theatricality of some of these killers, but still, they were mostly grounded in reality. This one was weird because it was like he played a comic book artist who was like really well known and like really popular, and it was obviously like all done in the style of Frank Miller. Like his stuff was like Frank Miller stuff. All his stuff looked like, it looked like Ronin or especially Sin City, right? And that's what all the stuff was based on. And during it was like he had this really beautiful fiance that he was like really in love with, and trying to think, and just around the time he was trying to make like a new comic, and he wanted to have a character called Knight or something like that, and he was trying to work out the details, and you can get through it. But anyway, so one night everything's great. He goes like out with his girlfriend, and they get like mugged, and it goes wrong, and they fucking kill her, right? So then the team, the BAU unit, are called in because suddenly all these gang members are getting killed, and it's pretty much it's always shown that it's, never see it, but it's heavily implied that obviously he's had some sort of psychotic break, and now he's going and murdering people in the underworld. But it's done in such a way, like again, we never see it, that it's like almost more like it is a comic book in a way. Because it's like he's not killing them with guns. Like he found like a sword or knife. So he's like, so suddenly it turns into like it is a comic book because we never see it. We only see the aftermath. But apparently in his psychotic break, he's just like cutting through people. It's pretty interesting. But I just remember I was like, that's an interesting take on it. And they even have a quote from Frank Miller at the end. That's the other thing. Most shows either begin or end with a quote from something. And they're usually pretty good. From all sorts of things, not just classic literature. Sometimes it'll be like a quote from, I don't know, Einstein or something, or a quote from, I don't know, Jim Davis. No, not Jim Davis, but you know what I mean. They'll pick quotes out of other places besides just classic literature. But it's a good show. Like a lot of shows, it was so popular it just kept going, and it suffered over time. Like a lot of shows, it's like, how good is something in season 11? I don't know. I'm not saying season 11's all bad, but it's like now we're in season 15, 16. I don't know. But,
I thought it was still on. I didn't know.
It came back for like one last season or something like that, and I was sort of taken aback by how old Paget Brewster looks now. I don't mean to be a jerk about it. I'm just saying, when you haven't seen somebody for years, I guess
She's 54.
She looks older. I don't mean to say that and be a jerk about it.
She has gray hair, doesn't she? She didn't she doesn't dye her hair or anything.
I don't know if that. She's also just sort of gained weight, which has nothing necessarily to do with aging, but she's just noticeably gained weight. It's like, how unforgivable for an actress to age or gain weight. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it did sort of shock me because she had been gone from the show and then came back and looked quite different. That's all I'm saying. But that's the other thing too about Joe Mantegna, because like by the time you get to the older seasons, he's so great. He's like what? He's got like a white beard. Like, holy shit. Like, I'm used to him having a black beard, and now he's not gray. He's white. He's white beard, It's a good show, though. And it has a lot, like Frankie Muniz, as I said, it has tons of guest stars, like well-known actors you would know. Tons of them. There's a pretty good arc with, what the fuck is his name? It's not gonna come to mood. He was a guy that was on Dexter too. Although he's playing the opposite because he plays a killer in this one that has like a sort of rivalry with Gideon in the early seasons. I can't think of his damn name. I keep thinking Peter Coyote. It's not Peter Coyote. What a weird thing to think of. Peter Coyote? That's pretty damn. That's pretty damn obscure. But for some reason, I mix them up. They're about the same age. Doesn't matter. But yeah, if you look that show up, you can find like a list of
not Keith Carradine.
Yeah, exactly, Keith Carradine.
Okay.
For some reason, I mixed the Carradines up with the Coyotes. There's also a couple Coyotes, even though the Carradines are more well known. I mean, what's Peter Coyote's best thing? Like he's the guy that you see from the waist down in E.T. because that's Peter Coyote.
Oh, really? Is he one of the friends, like one of the brothers' friends?
No, it's one of like the government guys that's like hunting E.T. And you do eventually see him from the waist up, but remember the very like start where like E.T. is out in the woods with his family and they're picking stuff and they all run. Well, there's some prominent shots of various guys. Their leader is this guy in jeans who you only see from like the waist down, and that's Peter Coyote. Eventually, you do see him, and he has the conversation with Elliot towards the end. He's like, you found him. I've been looking for him my whole life, and you found him, or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, Tim Curry plays a really interesting serial killer in a couple of episodes too. He's got all these rotten teeth, and he's insane. It's pretty good. But yeah, I would say definitely check out like the first season and see what you think. They're fairly simple at first. You know what I think? It's like Killer of the Week type episodes, right? It's like this week we take on this killer. There are ongoing arcs, and actually that's one of the things that bothered me as the show went on too, was because I cared less and less about their lives outside the jobs. Like mostly didn't care. But you do get to see how some things happen. Like there's a character, a blonde, who I think is really pretty, and she's aged really well, by the way. Her name is Jennifer Giroux, so they call her JJ. And you see how that starts, because at first she's not a profiler like the rest of them. She's a liaison for the press. But over time, she becomes a profiler and starts to have a more prominent role on the team. So you get to see little things like that happen. Things change a little bit. But yeah, she gets married, has a kid, all that stuff. But yeah, I would say definitely worth watching. But yeah, the first like few seasons at least, it's fairly simple stuff. It's like this week we go to this part of the country and fight, catch this kind of killer. And there's two big things that are wrong with it, and I probably mentioned before. One is they don't do this every episode, but most episodes follow a pattern of, the killer has killed some people and they're getting closer and closer. And then there's always like one last victim that the killer either has already captured and is going to kill or is going after. And the BAU always gets there just in time to save them. And the other thing is, not that I mind too much, but obviously in real life, profilers do not go out and catch the killer. And yet they always do. Sometimes they do have a SWAT team with them, but they're still there, guns out and everything. And it's like the FBI does not do that. The FBI does not send profilers in to catch killers. That was one thing that's nice about the Thomas Harris novels. When you have, say, even though, what's her name? Clarice Starling was not actually a profiler. That's what she wanted to be. And in the case of Will Graham, he was a profiler. It's like, well, they were maneuvered through clever writing. They were maneuvered into confrontations with the killer. But it was not procedure. It was not the FBI said, go get them, because that's not how the FBI does it. But in Criminal Minds, that's how they do it. It's like, we got to go, gear up. It's like profilers don't do that. Profilers might have like 2 weeks of weapon training, and that's about fucking it. And if they're ever on scene, yeah, the team goes in, they stay back. But in this, it's almost always them. And most of the time, they don't have anybody with them. But I get it. They're just trying to make it more involved and more dramatic. But yeah, he even says that in Red Dragon. He says to try to make his wife feel better because he's being pulled out of retirement. Right? He's just like, all I have to do is like locate the guy. It's like the cops will take him down, not me. But then through some clever things, he has to wind up getting directly with them. But there's nothing clever in Criminal Minds. It's just that's how it's written. It's written that they do go to apprehend them, which is not realistic. But I don't care. Because profilers, not only are they not trained properly for that, but they're too valuable to risk. Profilers are rare and they take a lot of training. So just have one go out in the field and get killed is like not really acceptable. I'm not saying any FBI agents are like, expendable, but some are more expendable than others, and that's just the truth. So yeah, profilers would be too valuable to risk in situations like that. But again, for the purposes of making the show dramatic and having them involved, so that's the other thing. So, and there are the odd episodes where they don't save the person or something goes wrong, or they try to talk the killer down. The killer like blows his brains out. That still happens, but really, in a way. But then when you think, well, no, not really, because it's like, aren't we supposed to care about the first 6 people we saw get killed before they caught him? So it's not too happy. And I understand too. It's like did they think, if we have too many unhappy endings, are people just going to say we're ripping off Law and Order? Because that was like Law and Order's favorite thing, right? To have an ending where like nothing works out, like the killer, it's like this guy, raped and killed 3 or 4 little girls, and it's just like, and then he gets off scot-free because his dad is rich or something, and he's smiling in the courtroom, and then they storm out down the steps and like, there's no justice, and they're like, there isn't, and it's just like Dick Wolf. It's like, wow, great episode, guys. Or they'll have an episode, where somebody gets killed at the end. Like, I saw a lot of that on Law and Order, where it's just like, we're gonna really punch you in the gut with a really depressing ending.
So I've never watched that one either.
Law and Order. Now, Law and Order was different because it's just something I watched here and there. So it's one of the things I liked about it was like even less so than Criminal Minds. There's almost no story arcs for the characters. It's just they do the job and that's it. But yeah, super formulaic too, but formulaic in a fun, comfortable way. Although like so many stock characters, I love when they whenever the first half, which is always like the cops interviewing the various people, because like. I get that it's New York, but these people are way too casual about being like interviewed by homicide detectives. How often are you being interviewed by homicide detectives? Like you've got how many times have they used the standard guy who's like in a warehouse or something and he's like packing boxes away? He doesn't stop packing the boxes away while the cops ask him pertinent questions about somebody they knew who was murdered. They just got to keep stacking those boxes. That's more important. And everybody's so casual about it. It's like, oh, yeah, Jimmy, he used to come around here. It's like, well, by the way, he's dead. That's what we're saying. It's like, yeah, I don't care that Jimmy's dead. It's like, I got a job to do. Or the last guy, bartender, that has like the best recall of anybody ever. It's like a bar, how many 100 people might come in a night or something like that. It's like, yeah, I remember her. She was about 5'8", red hair, came in with a guy that had leather pants. Like, you remember everybody? It was about probably 11:30 that I think she left. Like, how the fuck? Like, the bar is full of people everywhere. The lighting's not good, and you can remember this? Like, so the writing's not exactly stellar either, but they're following a formula. So yeah, Criminal Minds. Not Criminal Minds. That one's Law and Order. Law and Order Special Victims Units is even better because it's mostly about like sex crimes and stuff. And it's amazing how graphic they can get in talking about it. And it's even better because half of it is spoken by like Ice-T.
Yeah.
So you get the benefit of Ice-T being like, they raped this guy till he was split wide open. It's like, wow, that's daytime TV for you.
Yeah.
Like they can't they can't have nudity or say the F word or something, but they can talk about like stuff like that. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Good old Ice-T.
He was sodomized for 4 days straight.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I'd say Law and Order is like the ultimate like time killing show.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really good thing to have on, just to have on, I guess. I haven't watched it in years, but
I think Eric may be a big fan of that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's been on it's finally off, but it's been on for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Seriously, like 30 years, right? I mean,
yeah. And I mean, I liked the law part. I mean, the order part too, or whatever, because I like Sam Waterston a lot. Sam Waterston was usually the prosecutor, and he's really good. So that's one of the reasons I like that actor. But Jerry Orbach, I'm pretty sure if I'm either there's a couple actors. There's not too many actors out there that I refer to their faces. But if I'm not wrong, Jerry Orbach is the man who I always referred to as the dog-faced detective. He's got like a droopy face.
Yeah.
Just like, who is that black guy that's in a few Schwarzenegger movies? Like he's in Commando, and he's one of the guys who's on the team. He's the guy that keeps shaving in Predator.
Bill Duke.
Bill Duke. I always call Bill Duke the sad-faced black man because he always looks sad. He looks like he just finished crying. And I've never seen him smile in a single role. He always looks like he's just been crying and he's just drained out and he just yeah.
You know
So I
what
always
else he
called
was
him
in?
what else?
Mandy.
Yeah, I haven't seen Mandy since the first time I saw it. I was like you, I was unimpressed.
Yeah,
On paper it sounded amazing, and then I was like, yeah,
yeah. He's the guy he goes to like get all his
yeah,
weapons.
that's right, yeah. But yeah, Bill Duke. At least his name I knew. But yeah, I always called him the sad faced black man. He always looked so sad. But I
He
better
looks the
make sure
same
I'm
too.
I'm getting Jerry Orbach right. He's dead now. Jerry, is it ORB? Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Jerry Orbach. But anyway, he's one of the main. He died in 2004. Wow. All these episodes I'm thinking of predate 2004. No, this must be a different guy. I'm looking at the wrong one. No, I'm not. I'm so confused. He used to be a singer? Yeah, he's the Law and Order guy. He used to be a singer. I can't believe all those episodes I watched were pre 2004. Shit. I must have watched more stuff in the 90s than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he donated his eyes when he died. And what's weird about that is that two people got like they didn't get his eyes as a set. There's one person, there are two different people that each have one of his eyes. Which is just a weird thing to think about. But I guess it was nice of him.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could necessarily. You can
Eye
make dead
transplant.
eyes live again. What a world of wonders we live in. The eyes that have died can see once more. Crazy.
It's Mark Hamill's part of the anthology body part. Turned out into body bags. He gets an eye from a criminal or a dead, whatever convict.
Does it make him go crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been done a few times.
It's been done.
I like the Simpsons one where Homer gets Snake's hair in the Halloween one.
Yeah.
One of the Treehouses horror. He gets Snake's hair and it makes him murder people. Old Snake. But we can circle back and finish off. This one doesn't have to be too long. But yeah, this was a lot like for me personally when I saw it finally was a lot like the Good Will Hunting situation. And the Good Will Hunting came out around 97. It was a huge deal. And people were like, big movie, great stuff, everything. And I was like, and I ignored it. And then, a few years later I saw it. I was like, this is actually a very good movie. People were right. And it was kind of the same thing here. Same thing kind of happened. Like I heard the big deal in 2003. And I was like, I don't care. I'm not watching that. And then I maybe watched it, 3 or 4 years later. I was like, oh, this is actually quite good. So it was kind of a similar thing there.
I did the same with Good Will Hunting. I didn't see it until a few years ago.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Because, I mean, a lot of Good Will Hunting sounds so cliche, but it's actually pretty good when you watch it. I mean, Robin Williams is really good in that.
I think that's why I watched it. This was for him. Yeah. He's good in most things. Or was.
Yeah. I mean, he was... Honestly, even though he's a great comedian, we talked about it, I would say, like, he has less misses with drama than with comedy in a way. Like, he's done great comedy, but he's also done some really shitty comedy movies where I'd say most of the time when he's doing a dramatic role, it's pretty good. I mean, sometimes he walks the line and does, like, kind of a bit of both, like something like Good Morning Vietnam, which is a little funny, a little drama, but it's all drama, and, he's not making any jokes in Good Will Hunting. It's pretty good.
Yeah, like Bicentennial Man or something. That may be like one of the worst.
Oh, he's trying to be overly sentimental. I mean, he's not the only one that did that. Jim Carrey did that. Jim Carrey, remember, like the Majestic. Like, I'm gonna be all emotional. It's like I know Jim Carrey that you really admire Jimmy Stewart, but you're not Jimmy Stewart. Even though you do a great Jimmy Stewart impression, as I pointed out before. It was a fantastic Jimmy Stewart impression. But just thinking of any sort of closing remarks on this movie. What's his name? Uh, Clint Eastwood also contributed to the soundtrack of this movie.
Yeah, I thought that was odd.
Which is odd. I mean, it's not a very memorable soundtrack. It's fine, I guess. It doesn't really. The movie does not really, unlike most of these like Boston crime movies, or maybe we're just thinking about Scorsese. Like there's no like pop music intrusions. There's no like Rolling Stones song or anything like that going on, which I think is probably for the best in a way.
Yes.
I think it would just be sort of be distracting in a movie like this that has such a somber tone.
Scorsese goes all over with that stuff.
And I know, like, one of the things that people always point to when they're talking about, the intensity of the performance by Sean Penn is, of course, like, when he's finding out that it's his daughter and he's, like, losing it and the cops are holding him. Like,
I think that's probably why he won. That's probably why he won the Oscar right there.
I mean, I guess so. I don't think that's as hard to do as other stuff, honestly. I think, like, quieter, more subtle stuff is harder to do. And one of the things that also helps that is, like, when you're an actor and you're putting on a performance, it's always acting. He's crying and screaming about a person that doesn't exist. He's acting. He's putting on a thing, and he's doing a pretty good job. But one of the things that helps that is his movements aren't fake. He's giving it all he has there. That's what he told them. He said, I'm going to struggle for real. I'm going to try my best to break through you guys. So you do your best to hold me back. So that helps too, because they're not pretending. They're not going, oh, I can't hold him. That's him trying to get through and them doing their best to hold him back.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps the scene when you can just do something physical like that, because then that's not pretend, that's for real. So you can match that up with, again, I'm not saying there's anything fake or wrong about his like facial expression or dialogue. It's very good grief, but I just think things like that help. And I mean, maybe that is why he won. I don't know, but I'm more won over by quieter things, like the slow burn when he's talking to Dave, when it's leading up that he's going to murder Dave. Like that kind of stuff I think is better.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as grief goes, I give it to the kid more so. The boyfriend, I thought his grief was the best in the movie. That was really good, because you also have, because his is really is a weird conflicted one too, because not only has he lost the person he loves, but the person he can blame, who did it, was his brother.
Yeah.
So how much that would hurt him. And that's why it's that thing is like, who do you love? You say you love me, and also you believe him too, and you say, well, he's young, he's only like 20 years old, but he just says, I loved her. I'll never have that again. You think, well, maybe you will, but no, maybe he won't. And actually, he says that to the cops too. And I think Sean says some people don't even get it once.
Right.
So it's kind of like a better to have loved and lost situation, although it's a really bad situation for that. Usually when people say better to have loved and lost meant, you loved them, but they dumped you. This, she was going to marry me and she got killed. And I mean,
my brother.
Yeah. And, I've read a few things here where it's just like referred to like, as a prank. It was a prank gone wrong, but it was still fucking murder. They meant to kill her once it did go wrong.
Right.
If really the first shot, which was, because the first shot wasn't fatal, like if supposedly according to their story, the gun went off and they didn't do it. She caught it in the shoulder. You get her to the hospital, she'll be okay. But then that's not what they did. They chased her, beat her, and finished her off. So Jesus.
And she probably wouldn't have pressed charges either. So think about it that way, because it's her boyfriend's brother.
Yeah. But there's also a lot of good quotes, and I won't go over all of them, but I mean, that are pretty memorable thing. Like you get to see an interesting point is, at least that we see, we get to see, we see Sean Penn said freak out in his grief, but we don't actually see him cry. It doesn't mean we don't see him, but then he has that conversation with Dave where he says like, I can't cry for her, and that's when he finally is crying. He says, and he goes, Jimmy, you're crying now. He's like, yeah. But I don't know how different it is from the book. As far as I know, it doesn't make any big changes from the book at all. The only thing I could really find out that was different from the book is that Jimmy's name was Markham in the film, and it was Marcus in the book,
Yeah, that seems
which
insignificant.
is
Like,
it's very insignificant. So I couldn't find anything else that was really that different. I mean, maybe I'll have to read the book someday to find out.
yeah, I was going to ask you if you'd read the book.
No, it's not one I've read. In fact, before I forgot completely that it was based on a novel. I mean, it's not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the same guy who wrote Gone Baby Gone, by the way.
Really? Okay.
He also wrote Shutter Island. So some very significant stuff there. He also wrote episodes of The Wire.
Speaking of,
The author's name is Dennis Lehane.
you never watched The Wire, right?
Oh yeah, I watched the first 3 seasons.
Oh, you did. Well, the guy that abducts Dave at the beginning is he's the police chief.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't
He's done
recognize
tons
him.
of stuff. He's like, that guy. Oh, it's that guy.
Yeah, you're better at that than me, but yeah.
Well, I couldn't place it. I was like, I know I've seen that guy somewhere. Because I've seen The Wire probably 3 or 4 times all the way through.
I still keep meaning to watch the later seasons of it because people say that's not a show that does get worse. They like that stays good the whole way. So I want to do that.
It's what, five or 6 seasons.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a ton. I've gotten
It's not
about
it's,
maybe midway through the 3rd season.
it's not a crazy number of episodes in a season either. It's not like
No.
30 episodes. It's probably like 8 maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty manageable. I guess I'll get back to it. Maybe I'll get back to a. I've been pretty far. I mean, this movie actually came out of nowhere. I was like, yeah, let's do this because it wasn't at all what I've been doing lately. Like, I have not been in a crime drama or crime thriller mood at all. I've been doing more fantasy things lately. So I thought, let's watch something a little more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because I mean I am a big fan of crime stuff, but I'd been off it for a while. When this movie sort of just kind of I came across it, and I was like, this could be a good one to do.
Yeah, I get in a mood where I'll watch tons of documentaries on serial killers and stuff.
Yeah, I mean I'm the same way with my moods. Once I'm in a mood, like I'm in a mode, like I go full out on it, things like that. So yeah, it's the same thing. Any newish crime documentaries pop up lately?
I can't think of any right off the top of my head, but I mean they're always coming. Like that's the one good thing about Netflix, I'll say, is they do have tons of those.
Not a documentary, and we talked about it before, but I don't think you got to it yet. But I have to say that the mini series, it's like 10 episodes, the Dahmer thing, was surprisingly well done and tasteful. Because it actually really does try to highlight the victims and not just make it all about this killer. Like they really try to like show you who these people were in their lives. Like again, I'm not saying the families are going to super appreciate it. They're probably upset that it keeps getting dragged up, but at least it is better. It's done in such a way that it's not just all about like, oh, Dahmer's a sicko and we're going to get into his crimes. Yeah, they do, obviously. But if they do try to really give us like point of view and things on the victims and help remind us that, these were real people.
Right.
I would say it's quite tastefully done. And speaking of like Boston accents, I can't remember the name of the actor that does Dahmer, but man, does he nail that Wisconsin accent.
Oh yeah, it's Evan Peters.
Yeah, his Wisconsin accent is fantastic. He's like, why don't you come over here for some beers?
Yeah, he's a good actor. I like him. Well, I guess I need to watch it. Everybody was talking about it for a little while there.
Yeah.
I know everyone was saying, or not everyone, but it was getting some backlash. People saying that it was racist. And I'm like,
it was the exact opposite of racist, because that's another thing that was good about it, because it highlighted sort of how he took advantage of the racism. Like Dahmer was a lot of things. He wasn't racist. Dahmer, but he did take advantage of the racist climate. Like he knew if he went for young men of color and things like that, that he'd have a better chance. Cops wouldn't. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, the most famous, that whole incident, one of the kids getting away and Dahmer and running into the cops, and Dahmer convincing the cops to listen to him. And there were two women there, African American women, who the cops would not listen to, because they're like, at least, like, he's underage. He's like, no, he's not underage. It's like, he's naked. It's like, get him some ID, something. He's like, no, that'll be a hassle. Let him take him back. And, he took him back and he fucking killed him.
We're just having a lover's quarrel.
I would say the show is definitely not racist because it really not only highlights that, but it also goes from the point of view of like one of those characters. Like one of those women was one of his neighbors, an African American woman. It's true. She called the cops a bunch of times about, suspecting something. Like she didn't know, but she knew stuff was up and they wouldn't listen. So she's a big part of that show. Like they follow her a lot. So I don't think, how could you say the show's racist? Well, it highlights the systematic racism of the time.
It's almost like it was from people who didn't like, this is nonfiction. Like this is
what were they saying? Like, why is he mostly killing black people? That's
exactly.
racist.
That's exactly.
Like, that's not to please a racist white audience. That's what really happened. And the point is, he was taking advantage again of systemic racism and things like that, realizing that they would be a lower priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've seen so much stuff on Dahmer. I've seen probably every documentary there is. There was one I saw recently. It was called Fresh Meat, I think it was called, that actually had a lot of stuff I hadn't heard before. It was really good.
See, that's such a tasteless title. That makes me not want to see it when you give a title like that. But
yeah,
because
you got to give it some pizzazz somehow.
I guess it sounds awfully sensational. I mean, I get it. He was a cannibal. I get it. Yeah.
But they go pretty much into detail with like all the stuff they found in there.
Yeah.
And they very, very graphic detail with everything.
Some graphic shit. But yeah, did you see girl in the photo or girl in the picture or whatever?
On the picture, I don't think so.
That's an interesting one. That's not about a serial killer, but it's
I did see that one. I did see that.
By the time it's all over, it's so depressing because it's like it starts off pretty bad, but by the time you know the full truth, you're like, oh god, like it's even worse. And I'm not trying to laugh. It's a very tragic thing. I'm just saying, like, I wasn't like I sort of heard about the case before a little bit, but I couldn't put the details together. Mixing it up with other things. So like having it finally all laid out for me and everything, I was like, oh Jesus. But it's a pretty well done one. So you did see it, okay? Because that's another one I think that was on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what all happened.
I'm overheating. I'm gonna do a strip for the ship. Stripper music.
And change the icon here.
I'm glad that you've always got that locked and loaded. Do the stripper music from Slapshot.
Oh yeah.
So here's something that I think I knew, but then forgot for many years. Now, Rabbit, this has nothing to do with anything, but so there's a scene in the second Mighty Ducks movie that is tribute to that, where one of the tough guys, Portman, I guess. Because remember, they had Fulton. He was the guy that could shoot hard. But then in the second movie, when they added guys, they added a second guy. I think his name was Portman. And they were the Bash brothers, right? Because they played that. And they had the whole thing where he's, going to go to the penalty box and he does the strip thing, which is, obviously a tribute, an homage to the Slapshot scene. But anyway, that guy, he was a kid actor. I mean, obviously, he was only in his teens then. He is did you ever see the video for Let's Hear It for the Boy? I don't remember the name of the I don't remember the name of the artist, but this was an 80s pop song. You might remember hearing it in speaking of Kevin Bacon, Footloose.
Okay.
Remember the super gay scene in Footloose where his friend is like, "You need to teach me to dance," and it's like a montage of them prancing around. It's to that song. Let's hear it for the boy. Anyway, that song in the 80s when it came out had a music video with her, a very pretty pop performer. But it also had a boy, and Denise Williams. There you go. Yeah, I already talked. Actually, Jess and I talked about this. And what was I going to say? It has a little boy done up in like a little tux and tails and a top hat, and he's doing a dance. That's that guy. the guy that grew up to be Portman. I don't know what he is now, but that was like his first thing. He was this little cute dancing kid. It's a really adorable video, I have to say. But
Huh.
yeah, because I was telling Jess about the song for the intro for the Canadian show Owl TV, which I really like that song. The song reminded me a bit of Let's Hear It for the Boy. And I looked up the video. I was like, oh shit, yeah, the video's got the little dancing kid. So I looked up the dancing kid. I was like, it's Portman. It's just sort of funny.
I'm trying to remember what he looks like.
I don't even know what he looks like as an adult, but you know.
Not the goalie, right?
No, he was one of the tough guys.
Okay,
He's not in the first movie. He's in the second movie, and I guess possibly the third. He's one of the Bash brothers. Because Fulton was the original tough guy. Then they added another tough guy, him. They were the Bash brothers. And they just went around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he has a scene where he does the stripper thing, and the girls are all going. I'm like, he's the little kid from Let's Hear It for the Boy. That's so funny. But the Owl TV song was sung by Cree Summer. A lot of people know her for a lot of things, but maybe not that. So that's why I wanted to point that out. Voice actress Cree Summer.
Denise Crosby.
Anyway, I guess that'll do that. Do that. Anything else? I'm thinking Clint Eastwood. You know, it's funny, like you said, how prolific he is. That like he has a bunch of movies that he directed that I never saw. Especially in the last, like I said, he's done a bunch like in the last decade that I never saw. The last movie he did that I saw was Gran Torino, which I didn't think was very good. I thought that went too hard on the melodrama. And it was also super predictable. Like I think for the after the very first scene, I knew kind of exactly what was going to happen.
Wait, is that the Get Off My Lawn?
Yeah.
Is that Gran Torino? Okay.
Yeah. He's the old man. I don't know.
Playing himself.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's like the first movie where he really leaned into like I'm an old man now, so that's what I'm going to play. So before that, he would kind of defied it a little. Not that he wasn't old, but you know that wasn't what the character was necessarily about. But
aren't they like from Laos or something? They're like Laotian, and he calls them like chinks or something.
Yeah. You didn't see it?
Yeah, no, I saw it. It's been a long time.
Well, and he like bonds with the boy over time and all this stuff. Yeah. But yeah, first he's really racist against them. I think maybe
you yellow bastard, you're not so bad after all.
I think he like fought in the Korean War or something. You know?
Yeah. They're all whatever. Insert racial slur.
Yeah. But yeah, because I mean, he did. Yeah, he did. I saw both Chang and Gran Torino. They were both 2008. And then he's continued to make movies right up to 2021. And I've heard of them, but I haven't seen any of them. But Richard Jewell's not bad, huh?
I like Richard Jewell. It is what it is. It's nothing fancy, you know?
Yeah.
It's basically just telling that story. The guy who plays Richard Jewell is amazing, though.
I guess the best movie that he did that I saw was Unforgiven, but the one I like to shine a light on is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I think it's a great movie. It's a really good book, too. The book's obviously a bit better. The movie has to take events and sort of condense them, but it's still a really good movie. I enjoy the hell out of that movie. It has a lot of, and for a movie about a real life, it's true crime, about like a real life murder. It actually has a lot of good moments of humor. God, my hair's going crazy. Put my hat back on. But yeah, so that's good enough. We can finish up. So it's good to finally do something that a big, icon like him did, and also, oddly enough, Sean Penn and possibly Kevin Bacon. I'm struggling to think of either of them in movies that we did, and to a certain extent, I suppose, Tim Robbins too, because while he was in a movie we did, he wasn't like a major character. I'm a little less sold on his performance than other people's, but I don't know. It's fine. I think it's not like he was bad. I just found his scenes the least interesting in the movie, honestly. Mm-hmm. I don't know why.
You're talking about Tim Robbins?
Yeah. As Dave. Dave's an interesting character. And, you see how broken he is and the things he's been through and how they've changed him and the way he talks. And like I said, it's interesting, his relationship with his son, because his son is obviously used to him being weird and spacey. Remember, he's telling him the story. It's what kind of story is this with your strange wording and imagery? That's why I don't get why the wife is so quick. Isn't the wife used to him being weird and spacey? Like, I
Yeah,
can't
not like
believe
this.
that she so quickly is ready to believe just because, yeah, he is obviously lying about something. That's true. He's lying, he first is, stories like he fought off a mugger. And she brings it up a few times. So there's still nothing in the news about that or anything like that. So she has reason to doubt him for something. But to go right to, he must have killed Katie, I mean, what kind of wife are you?
Mm-mm.
And then to tell that to Sean, to
Yeah,
Jimmy?
yeah.
But I mean, I guess why not? Because by that point, she told him she was afraid of him and she'd taken the kid away. Like,
I
that's
mean,
why this.
she got him killed. It's
Yeah.
100% her fault.
I mean, yeah, that was the because one thing about Jimmy, I said Jimmy's not a good guy and all that. Like he did want to be sure, and that's what made him sure.
But yeah,
So
he's a
yeah,
weird dude, that's for sure. Or was a
yeah,
weird dude.
he was a weird dude, and he says stuff like one of them says like he never came back, that kind of thing. That was the last time we saw him. One of them says something like, it's like, in a way, we all got in that car. I was like, yeah, in a way. It's easy for you to say. You didn't go through 4 days of like sexual torture or whatever.
Right.
But I get it though. Like you would have some guilt about that too. It's almost like a survivor's guilt thing, right? Like it could have been me. It was my
Right.
friend. It wasn't me, but it could have been me.
Well, he's the one that was dumb enough to get in the car.
Yeah, but it seems like they all might have been. They did sort
Yeah.
of pick him out either because they thought he was the dumbest or possibly the most attractive. I don't know, but yeah, type thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, on like when they see Jimmy, they kind of point. Maybe they think Could they say something like, "You're like the ringleader of this, aren't you?" Like maybe they think, "Oh, he'd be too feisty.
Right.
We want to
Yeah.
handle him." Because it's distasteful to put yourself into that sort of frame of mind. It's like, what if I'm a kidnapper? How do I select these
Yeah.
people? Here, want to hear a really tasteless bad joke? Don't
Sure.
worry, it won't get us banned because there's no like racist language. Or I
Oh.
wouldn't tell a joke like that anyway. So don't worry, people. You don't have to cancel me for this, but you will agree to say so. And I'll tell because I thought of the word kidnapper because I was thinking because the way you can tell this joke, you can use different words. I'm going to use the word kidnapper because it's the softest word probably. It's a
Mhm.
really short joke too. So you have a child and a kidnapper are walking through the dark woods alone, right? And the
Uh-huh.
kid shivers and says, "I'm scared." And the kidnapper looks down at the kid and says, "You're scared? I have to walk out of here alone."
That's a good one.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that aren't going to like that, but it's
Yeah, I got to
it's a bit
watch
it's
two
a bit
hours and 6 minutes to get there. So
it's a bit dark. Anyway, that seems like a perfect place to end. So thanks a lot, guys. Good to cover those
let's
bases, and we'll see you all next time.
see you next time. Thanks for watching.